Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council. It's Monday, April 27th, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown,
Here.
Colebrook,
Here.
Hersey,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Wu,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. We have a quorum. Next up is approval of minutes from previous meetings. These include the meeting of April 13th, 2020, the public hearing on April 13th, 2020, and a special meeting on April 16th, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Sharice, seconded by Bill Colebrook.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any corrections? Seeing none, will all those in favor please say aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? I don't believe there are any. Next up is public input. We'll do that first, and that will be followed by a presentation by Police Chief Seraphin and Lieutenant Norton. Does the clerk have emails to read into the record first? Then we'll follow that by verbal input.
Yes, I have 10 of them.
Okay.
I'll start with Kay Kirkpatrick, who says, I am outraged at how Alea Lewis was treated by police officers on April 10th. Officers who are supposed to protect her. This is a grave miscarriage of duty to protect people. You must start handling domestic violence calls better. Next is Karen James. I understand that when people film something, they do not always get the beginning or the end. What they get is the middle to a story and then fill in the blanks. Was she not warned to let them do their job and investigation? When she starts to flee, is that not reason to secure from getting a weapon? When the first police officer approached her, did he not try to secure her by putting her hands behind her back? Did the woman not throw the first punch? Did she not continue to fight or resist the officers? And finally, was she not smiling in her mugshot? I do find it interesting when folks call the police and then it does not turn out the way they thought. Well, then the police were in the wrong. But in the last month, we have had several shooting and domestic violence calls, and no one seems to think those were mishandled. Seems to me that someone is looking for a payout. I beg you not to give in and fight for our crew in blue. Next is Joey Zarnzi to the Urbana City Council. Having watched the video posted to Facebook of the incident, I'm appalled, if not surprised, at the violent and abusive conduct of the police against Alea Lewis. Regardless of whatever her words towards officers were, she was clearly unarmed and no threat to the overarmed police on the scene. The officers clearly left a protected area near their squad cars to literally hunt down and assault a member of our community. I have little doubt that if she were white and behaving in this matter, that she would have been treated very differently. The police were apparently set on punishing this woman for challenging their authority and approached her with the intent to cause her harm, knowing that if she resisted, they would be justified to brutalize her. We cannot continue to allow the police to terrorize our residents, especially and disproportionately our Black residents. The officers involved should be immediately suspended, with the officer that punched her fired without any paid leave or severance and prosecuted for assault. Next is Ron Kester to the Urbana City Council. If better judgment prevailed, Alea Lewis would be a free person today with no outstanding charges against her by the state and no wounds to her body caused by the police. Instead, the Urbana Police, the state's attorney, and the Urbana City Council are following a familiar script when it comes to police violence. A, assert that the police followed procedural guidelines and their actions should not be formally investigated. And B, point out that the public hasn't reviewed all the evidence and therefore is in no position to judge. What the public does know by virtue of citizen journalism is that no more than 30 seconds elapsed between the time the principal subject to the police call, Cameron Busby, was put into a police car and Miss Lewis was knocked to the street. 30 seconds. If the police had waited 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, could they have approached Lewis without assault rifles and done their business without violence? Unquestionably, There are ways to resolve confrontations like this nonviolently. And when the state's attorney approached Ms. Lewis's case, the state's attorney could have recommended that Ms. Lewis be released on her own recognizance, even chosen not to file charges, given the avoidable nature of the circumstances. Instead, the prosecution continues. And the truth remains, Ms. Lewis was not the reason why police were called that day, nor was she in violation of any law before the police laid hands on her. To repeat, Ms. Lewis did not do anything wrong until a wrong was done to her. Add as much evidence to the story as you like, and that truth remains. Here are 3 actions we can take beginning righting this wrong. A, contact the state's attorney's office to demand that the charges be dropped against Aaliyah Lewis. B, issue a formal apology on behalf of the city of Urbana to Ms. Lewis. And C, proceed with an independent investigation about the use of force against her by the Urbana police. Okay, next is Jeffrey Putney. My name is Jeffrey Putney and I live in Champaign. I write with regard to the April 10th incident of police violence in Urbana. Over the past week, city officials have yet to apologize for the harm committed by our police officers. They have yet to apologize for the press release that attempted to gaslight people who viewed the video of the incident and were rightfully outraged. They have yet released a statement for how they will support the victim of police violence and her community. This is unacceptable. Our community must do better. You've also heard the police chief answer questions about this incident by using technical sounding language like bronchial stun to describe the need to punch a woman while 3 armed officers lay on her. I do not want to hear this type of reprehensible rhetoric at today's meeting. This is not how you support a victim of police violence. I fear that a real scenario for today's council meeting is that the police chief will give a single-sided public platform from which he will put forth a narrative that erases and obscures a woman's intensely personal experience of trauma at the hands of police. Again, this seems to be a continuance of harm by public officials, and I would ask that you reconsider. And finally, I again ask the city to drop all charges against this victim of police brutality. Thank you for your time. Next is Emily Close. Good evening, my name is Emily Close. On April 17, Urbana City staff posted a video on the city's Facebook page called A Message from Mayor Diane Wolf Marlin. In this video, the mayor discusses the April 10 arrest of Aaliyah Lewis by Urbana police officers. During this video, the mayor alludes to the CPRB, which is Urbana's Civilian Police Review Board. Here are some facts the mayor omits when discussing the CPRB and the complaint process. First, the CPRB was established in 2008. It was not the board that some citizens of Urbana had hoped for, but it's what they got from city leaders who were reluctant to ask for police accountability back then. Mayor Marlin is correct when she states that the CPRB is an appeals board. She fails to mention, however, that only 3 citizens' complaints of the many filed with the CPRB have made it to the appeals stage since the board was formed 12 years ago. In fact, this 3rd complaint was only heard by the appeals board on January 29 of this year. Second, in her video, the mayor tells citizens that Chief Serafin will conduct an expedited review of the use of force tactics used against Ms. Lewis. Citizens may not be aware that the Urbana Police Department is 100% in charge of investigating the conduct of Urbana police officers. There is no independent third party. The obvious conflict that exists when the police department investigates its own officers means that an investigation into police conduct by design lacks objectivity, transparency, and impartiality. Third, in the April 17 video, Mayor Marlin asked citizens to refrain from a rush to judgment about how police officers conducted themselves on April 10. However, the mayor fails to mention that Ms. Lewis herself has only 45 days from that incident date to file a citizen complaint with the CPRB if she chooses to do so. Let's assume that Ms. Lewis is not incarcerated, is able to get her trauma under control, knows how to file a FOIA request for records, and actually get some of those records from the city's FOIA officer despite the city's best efforts to withhold those records. 45 days is a very small window of time in which to clear those hurdles and others, especially for someone facing criminal charges that probably will not be resolved for months. The reality is that Ms. Lewis will almost certainly be unable to file a timely complaint because of the obstacles placed in her way by the city. So Mayor Marlin and council members, if you're going to open the door on the Civilian Police Review Board and the complaint process, you can expect citizens to walk through that door, ask questions, and demand answers and accountability. Thank you for listening. Next is Catherine Majewski. Hello, my name is Catherine Majewski, and I'm an Urbana resident. I am deeply concerned by the response or lack thereof from UPD and the city of Urbana regarding the violent arrest of Alea Lewis. The continuing denial of what is clearly visible in video footage is galling at best and manipulative at worst. I would like to voice my support for dropping the charges against Ms. Lewis and for an independent investigation of the incident, including a full public release of the associated footage. Thank you for your time. Next is Tanya Josek. Urbana City Council, I am writing to request that the city stop defending police actions, especially ones of violence, in reference to the incident on April 10th. I strongly encourage the city to drop all charges against victims of brutality. And the last one, I think, is Josu David Cisneros. Dear council members and mayor, thanks for this opportunity to share my public comment with you. I write to express my deep concern at the violence experienced by an Urbana resident at the hands of the UPD, as well as the conspicuously callous response by our city leadership. You are already aware of the many instances of discrimination and the violations of UPD policy that occurred on April 10. You have seen the shocking and disturbing video. You have read the lists of nearly a dozen UPD policies that officers violated, as was documented by one member of the public. You have read the official responses by city leadership, including the highly problematic press release by Urbana Police Lieutenant David Smizer, which ironically validates all of the abuses documented in the video, such as that even though Lewis began arguing with officers and started walking away from them in compliance with their orders, somehow this necessitated a patrol sergeant to approach Lewis, in spite of her compliance, and tackle her to the ground. Or the claim that an officer's punch in the head and knee in the ribs, all while awkwardly carrying an assault rifle, were somehow necessary to distract an already prone woman. And you have heard the police chief, whose defenses are not any more exculpatory, who calls a punch to the head of a prone person a brachial stun and argues, strangely, that the officer's provocative and aggressive behavior, moving toward Miss Lewis and attempting to lay hands on her, was a response to their concern that a gun was still present on the scene. Most problematic of all has been the city's overall response to this incident. Our leadership has sought to spin justifications for these actions, to appeal to special evidence not available to the public, and to ignore issues of racial bias as they relate to this incident, even though you are happy to talk about these issues when touring the city's efforts to eliminate disparities in traffic stops or other forms of policing. It's time for the city to stop these denials and hollow defenses and to provide a full, transparent, and just accounting of and inquire into these events, including appropriate disciplining of the officers involved, public transparency in the inquiry, and restitution to the target of this abuse. Thanks for your service to the city. That's all.
I think you missed Mark Enslin.
I missed one. Okay, let me find. Mark Enslin. You're right. I'm sorry. To the council and mayor of Urbana, the video of Urbana police approaching stationary, hands visible, unarmed vocal Alea Lewis, tackling her, punching her, handcuffing, and arresting her is evidence of three problems I see in the encounter. 1, uncalled for violence against a non-threatening person. 2, lack of effective de-escalation effort in relation to a person vocally expressing upset. And 3, lack of social distancing and PPE during a pandemic. A fourth problem that I learned from press reports is that after her arrest, Ms. Lewis was taken to the jail during a time when jails and prisons have proven to be particularly unsafe places during the pandemic. And given our history, locally and nationally, it is hard to dismiss the impression of racial profiling was also a factor in this incident. In 2005 or so, I attended a hearing at the Urbana City Building chaired by Laurel Prossing on proposal for Civilian Police Review Board for Urbana. And I recall the testimony of a young woman who told a similar story of unreasonable behavior by Urbana police. As I remember it, she was at a party where there'd been a fight, police were called, and she was upset the police had not called an ambulance for a relative who was bleeding. She was vocally urging that they call an ambulance, and the response of the police was to knock her to the ground and arrest her. This was to me a clear indication that Urbana residents needed recourse to address such misconduct. To remedy the current incident, I think disciplinary action against the officers and a call for dropping any charges against Ms. Lewis are appropriate. Okay, is that all 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, does anyone wish to speak to the Urbana City Council tonight? Please use your hand raising button if you can.
I do.
Sarah Nixon?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Sarah Nixon. The Alea Lewis case sends a terrifying message to victims of domestic violence in our community. And the Urbana Police Department's incompetence in responding appropriately is all too familiar to me personally as a survivor of domestic violence who, in the past, had to call on the UPD for help in crises, only to find myself and my child repeatedly failed and re-victimized by our police force. Many other concerned community members have already addressed a range of important and deeply disturbing facets of this incident. I would like to add 2 more concerns. 1, I know from my own experience that in a domestic violence crisis situation, the victim is very likely to be experiencing a state of complex traumatic shock, the symptoms of which can include disorientation, incoherence, reactivity, and cognitive difficulty in processing and responding to even simple questions or commands. To an untrained person, these characteristics of traumatic shock can be mistaken for intoxication and even mental illness. But there is no excuse for Urbana police officers to be untrained in domestic violence situations. And the second issue I need to highlight is the glaring failure on the part of the Urbana Police Department in not immediately transporting their victim, whom they had violently attacked, to the emergency room for her trauma and injuries to be assessed. She very likely suffered concussion from the brutal punch delivered to her head, but we will never know, will we? The fact that they took her instead to jail is unconscionable and raises many deeply troubling questions, most especially because this incompetence and misconduct is a long-standing problem with the Urbana Police Department. And I join the community in demanding a full, independent, domestic violence-informed inquiry into this unacceptable incident. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? I'm not seeing.
There are 2, Mayor, Dottie Vera Weiss and Ben.
Okay, Dottie, go ahead.
Oh, Ben's been unmuted.
Ben? Okay, go ahead, Ben.
Hi there, Ben Jocelyn. I just want to take this time to say, choosing to follow the rules that have been systemically put in place to disadvantage Black people and to privilege police officers is not a racially neutral or morally neutral thing to do at this point in time. We know the history. It's borne out across the nation, across time, and across the history in our jails here. Choosing to say we followed procedures and being able to write it into a way where you can try and pretend that you're innocent doesn't make it morally right. This is Urbana's chance to say we believe in a better future for all of our residents, and a failure to do so by the part of anyone who's in city government to say we need demand better. We need to demand better for the people of this town. This is morally not okay and cannot be tolerated. Anyone who doesn't stand up against police violence and racialized police violence, misogynistic police violence, is complicit in the thousands of people who are tortured by it every year. It's not okay. It is your obligation to stand up and protect the people of this town. This is your time. You have to do something. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. Charlie, is there anyone else waiting?
Yeah, Dottie Vera Weiss.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good evening. I agree with many of the things that others have said this evening. I have reviewed several times the bystander video, and although I recognize that it is from one perspective and was not able to either pick up well the words that that Aaliyah Lewis may have said, nor all the details of the actions that went on, it seemed very clear to me that she was not a threat to the police officers, that if they had concern that she might have a gun, then why weren't they stationing somebody near her and dealing with her for that long beginning of the video? It seems as though that might have been an excuse that was raised in retrospect to justify the actions that occurred. I believe it's really important that the body cam videos be released to the public and not in edited portions, because it can always be edited to include or exclude the issues that the person doing the editing wants to have seen. So I believe that we need to have a more clear-cut understanding of some of the actions of the police, and I doubt that there is full justification for them, but I believe that the public and Aaliyah Lewis herself really deserve this. I also agree that it would seem appropriate to drop charges, because I couldn't see anything that she did that justified the approach of the officer to her in the beginning, and the complaints that have been raised against her were basically that she was resisting what appeared to be his unjustified attack. I hope that you will do what you can to drop the charges, to arrange that they be dropped, and that there be an apology and medical treatment for any injuries that she sustained, payment for them, and also for the emotional injuries that she suffered. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, I've had two more come in to email.
Okay, go ahead and read, please.
From Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood and Bishop Underwood. They indicate that they're concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problems. And then from Alan Axelrod, good evening, City Council. When the City Council does not respond to public comment, the side mentions are even louder, as that uttered by Eric Jacobson at the last public meeting. Folks are coming with severe concerns. They deserve to be listened to with respect at a minimum. Okay, that's the last of them.
And anybody else wish to speak?
One hand just went up. Daniel Jared Lockamaker.
Hi, just a question first of understanding. Will the public comment be available after the statement from the chief of police?
No, this is the only time for public comment.
Okay, then I'll go ahead now. First, I think it would be beneficial if a dialogue were to actually be taking place between the city council, police, and the citizens of Urbana for us to be given the opportunity to respond after hearing whatever new or different information it is that the chief of police is about to present. It makes it a very lopsided and time delayed and not very cohesive process for us all to be making statements now, and then after a week when many of us also made statements, only after our statements will some information be given. We'll be then waiting for X amount of time before speaking again. Doesn't seem very efficient. What I would like to specifically address is this idea of a brachial stun or whatever term the chief may end up using if he addresses it at all. I don't know. As I referenced last time, I was a member of the United States Navy. I worked as a hospital corpsman, and I was trained in restraint procedures. I worked in a detention facility of the United States military. I speak from experience then in saying that a blow to the head is never an acceptable action in a restraint. Neither kneeing nor punching are allowed even in circumstances when pain compliance techniques might be being used. What was depicted in the video, and again, I echo Dottie Veerweiss's sentiments that I do not have access to because it has not been available to the other angles and perspectives on this. That's a problem as well. But from the limited footage that I have, it is very clear that it was a blow to the head that Aaliyah received, and that in no means I can imagine is allowed by the Urbana police if it's not allowed as an acceptable restraint procedure by the United States military. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the presentation by Chief Seraphin and Lieutenant Norton. As way of background, as I indicated last week, I've asked the chief to provide an overview of the April 10th interaction between a female resident and the Urbana police. The Urbana police were initially responding to a call for service related to a shooting near Colorado Avenue in Cottage Grove. As most of you know, but this is for the public's information as well, a portion of that interaction was captured on video by a member of the public and posted to Facebook. So tonight's presentation includes much more detail and context before, during, and after the incident than what was shown on the video on Facebook. And I wanted to let you know that the city was cleared by the state's attorney's office to share some of the body camera footage and patrol car footage video with the public. And that footage is included in the presentation tonight. In addition, the internal use of force review has been completed, and I believe a copy of that report was mailed to city council members just before the council meeting. It was just completed late this afternoon. That report will be included in the meeting record. And finally, I've asked the state's attorney's office to review the incident as well. That has not yet been done. But tonight, we will focus on the incident itself, and I'm going to turn this over to Chief Seraphin and Lieutenant Norton.
Thank you, Mayor. I assume you can hear me here as we're trying out this new Zoom meeting. Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay. Well, the presentation should be up, the initial slide. Can you see the initial slide?
No.
I do.
I may be having a problem on my end.
Your video is also frozen, Diane,
Okay.
but we can see the presentation.
Okay, go ahead with the presentation. I'll try another computer.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bryant Seraphin, and I am the police chief here in the city of Urbana. Tonight with me is Lieutenant Jason Norton, and we are going to do our very best to present the full facts on the event from about 17 days ago. There has been a lot of discussion. I've read a lot of emails that have come in on this, and I hope that tonight we can at least show that there seems to be a running concern about a lack of response, and clearly I don't want that to be the case. And we hope tonight is at least beneficial to all the citizens. I would like to thank Julia Reese, the state's attorney, for meeting with us and allowing us to be able to use these videos as there are pending criminal cases. Tonight, you'll see many different perspectives, multiple body cameras, some squad car video, and I hope that as we go through this, the citizens and the council can understand all of the facts as the officers knew them to be at the time the event occurred. And that is extremely important here. That's the standard that the United States Supreme Court uses with regards to judging officer behavior. In addition to these facts, we're also going to help illustrate and discuss tactics, things that we ask the officers to do, things that we have trained them to do, things they learn right here at our very own University of Illinois Police Training Institute. And when we do these, the analysis ultimately will boil down to, were the officers within policy, and was the action or actions they took legal? And we hope to be able to answer those questions tonight as we move through this presentation. As we move on, I think there's some important clarifications I want to make at the beginning of this. And there's some key terms that we use in policing, and I want to just make sure that everyone sort of gets a chance to understand some of these things. In other words, there is a difference between a frisk and a search. A frisk is something that we do as police officers when we want to find if there are any weapons. It will be more of a crushing of exterior material, clothing, and those types of things. It's not as intrusive as a search would be. A search where we might go into someone's pockets, remove the hanky, and determine if there's any contraband in the hanky. So a frisk is less intrusive than a search. A frisk, like I said, is traditionally used in the context here of weapons. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a pat down. There's a detention is different than an arrest. In 1968, a lot of people seem to hear about the term Terry stop, and that was the Terry versus Ohio case that allowed so that officers could go and temporarily detain someone so that they could conduct an investigation, which is different than someone making a custodial arrest and moving them to perhaps another place like a jail or a police station. When we talk about the detentions, sometimes it might include handcuffing. That doesn't necessarily convert it into an arrest. And that's considered reasonable suspicion versus probable cause. There's a continuum, I guess, of legal certainty that we want to just make sure that we understand tonight. At one end, if I were to assign, I guess, a numerics to it, a reasonable suspicion would be toward the lower end of legal certainty, something in the neighborhood of a 20 to 30% certainty. A lot of people hear about probable cause, and traditionally it's more likely than not something would have occurred, and so that's more in the 51% certainty. And then, of course, at the far end, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, what we use for is higher than 90% sort of certainty level. Some of these terms are because we kind of refer back as we go through the presentation. At this point, I will turn over the next slide to Lieutenant Norton, who has been a defensive tactics instructor, both at our department and at the university's Police Training Institute. And he's going to cover now an overview of the use of force continuum.
So like the chief said, I'll give you a brief overview of what police officers from coast to coast are trained in. This is the use of force continuum from the Police Training Institute, and continuums like this are used across the nation from coast to coast. There are a few variances, but this is the one that typically that our officers are exposed to. You'll see on the right-hand side, or I don't know what side of the screen it would be for anybody else. So our right-hand side is officers, left-hand side would be subjects, and they're based off a reasonable officer's perception of the subject's actions. At the very bottom of the scales, you'll see a cooperative person. Basically, an officer's response to a cooperative person is just open hands or asking them to do whatever the officer wishes, as far as put their hands behind their back or just talking to them. You don't really have to do any control hold with a cooperative person. A passive resistor, who's somebody who is basically not resisting an officer, but maybe verbally resisting, not any kind of physical activity as far as resisting. They may be a protester just sitting there and not doing anything. So that would be more of a passive resistor. An active resistor could be something as little as when an officer goes to arrest somebody and they grab their arm, that person tightens their arm. So they have some kind of reaction or muscular reaction to an officer. What we're talking about here, and you'll see in the videos coming up, is a person who is an aggressive assailant, somebody who is actually fighting with the police, physically fighting with the police, which would give the officers the right to use impact weapons, baton, taser, and strikes, and able to try and control this person and bring them under control. So that's what we're talking about here, is a level 4 person basically throughout the confrontation.
So the first thing that we're going to start with is the 911 call. Throughout this, there's been slight redaction to the name of the caller. So I will point that out when you hear a blank, and there's a couple of short blanks in the middle. But this is the entirety of the 911 call, except for the name of the reporting party. And we'll back up to get to the right slide here.
Champaign County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
It's 1102 East Colorado Avenue.
Can you repeat the address for me, please, so correct?
1102 East Colorado Avenue.
Okay.
It's boy that had shot himself, but he's like walking up and down the street with a gun in his hand. I just wanted to like report that, because when I was taking groceries in, we heard like a loud gunshot, and he fell, but now he's like up stumbling back and forth in the street, and some girl was like behind him trying to, I don't know, see something, I don't know, but he got the gun in his hand, hiding it in his hands and stuff like that.
Can you just try again for me?
He's African American. He has on a black coat and blue jeans, like joggers with red lines.
Did you see the gun?
Yes, I seen him like jump the clip. He had it in his hand. The clip fell out and hit the ground, and he already put it back in there, and he tried to tuck the gun in his pants.
Can I have the name, please? How do you spell that name? You live there at 1102 Colorado?
Yeah, but he's like outside my apartment.
On Colorado or on Cottage Grove?
On Cottage Grove. So I walking towards like Dollar Tree.
And you said there's a female with him?
Yeah, right. She's African American, and she has like a crew neck on that's black and a ponytail in her hair. That's all I remember.
All right, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
So that is the initial 911 call. And as a matter of fact, it was the only call received on this particular incident. So that is the initial facts. And I know there's been a lot of discussion regarding some of the domestic violence issue, and we're going to go into a little bit into some of that maybe a little bit later. But the initial call was not for domestic violence, but for a shot fired in an unarmed subject and possibly an injured subject. So now what we'll do is move over to the actual an overview of this event, and I'll let Lieutenant Norton sort of explain this particular scene over.
So Miss Lewis and Mr. Busby live at this apartment on Colorado 1003. So the incident started here. There was a shot fired from this address, traveling down the street, roughly a block down the street, through a window into an occupied apartment at 1102. They then took this path down Colorado onto Cottage Grove, where they were ultimately stopped by the police as they were bound at the intersection of Cottage Grove and Glenwood Oaks.
So one of the things that you'll hear next is we're going to play the dispatch footage. This has been compressed just for time's sake. So this is not necessarily exactly live action time, but you will hear now the officers being dispatched. You will hear what they were told, and you will hear them coordinating their response. One of the things that you'll hear at the beginning of this is you will hear officers reacting to a couple slightly further north on Cottage Grove. And so there were essentially two young African-American couples that were actually viewed in the area. And so that caused officers to have to split their attention between the two couples. So we'll go ahead and play the radio traffic at this time.
379, 378, possible shooting on Colorado on Cottage Grove. 78. Caller from 1102 Colorado says she heard a loud pop. Now there's this gentleman walking up and down Cottage Grove with a gun in his hand. He looks like he's wounded, and there's a black female with him. One call on this from inside 1102 Colorado. It's a male black, wearing black coat, black pair of blue jean type joggers or blue joggers. She says his magazine fell out of the gun. He then picked it up and put it back into the gun, put the gun in his waistband. There's a black female with him with some sort of crew neck shirt walking up and down Cottage Grove. 5079, are you behind me? We head towards the other side of Sunnycrest Park. 78, 79 are coming from the north. There's another unit that can go around to the south side of East Colorado. I got 379 RP able to advise where on Cottage Grove we're at right now. I hung up the phone on her. She said they were on Cottage Grove in front of 1102 Colorado. You have.
So what you've just heard right there, we'll cut back in a couple of different times. We might pause to help explain a couple of things. What you heard right there was Sergeant Mike Cervantes, 422 is his ID number. You heard him asking if he had the air. Essentially what that means is that officers, when responding to a severe, potentially dangerous incident, will ask to have the air so that other officers not involved don't inadvertently use the radio traffic for something less important. So in this particular case, that's what he's confirming, that they do have the air. For those who don't know, the University of Illinois Police Department and the Urbana Police Department share a radio frequency. And so that's sometimes one agency might be doing something and not realize what the other agency has. So that's essentially what that phrase means there.
Yeah, Ford. We got a male walking away from us, walking back towards the castle. The female walking towards. She has a gray shirt and looks like dark jeans. 22 is the male up there. They were together. Or not. The unit behind, trying to mark it. Walking towards you through the park. 4710 where he to the west side of the 1806. He's going to the Crestview Park now, walking towards 1806.
So what they're describing now is the first couple that they encountered. The male juvenile is walking up into Crestview Park, and they're getting ready to get out with him.
Halfway between the playground and the building, walking towards me. 422, the two that are in front of your squad match the description. Oh yeah, 347, out with 422.
So that concludes the radio traffic. We're now going to flip to the body cameras of the two officers who you heard just arrive on scene.
379, 378.
And so we're going to, now we'll be moving ahead. We'll move to those body cameras in just a second. One of the things, again, what I want to make sure that is clear is, would you back it up one slide, please? At the top of the screen, you'll see the words Crestview Park. That in that area is where, roughly where there's a juvenile that's been detained from the first couple. And so the officers are dealing with that subject there. There's also been a female who's been addressed up on the north piece, further north of Cottage Grove, sort of where our map, I think, sort of ends. But what we're going to do here real fast is we're going to show you then of this juvenile subject, a similar sort of tactical response from the officers. and I'll have, and Lieutenant Norton can help, I guess, help me out a little bit here with regards to this is sort of what we want to have happen. And so if we scroll up to the next slide, what we'll see is if you look on the edge of the screen, you can see one officer there who's going to challenge him from farther back. We're going to want to have them proned out with their on the ground. That way, if indeed an attack were to come, it would take longer for the officer to get up and stand up. And this is a standard tactical practice. In this particular case, the body cam you're watching is from an officer approaching from the rear, if possible. Sometimes we can't always do that, but that gives the officer the advantage if we're approaching from the rear. Lieutenant, I don't know if I missed anything on those, if you want to flesh any more out on that.
No, Chief, you're right. You're looking for the hands to be splayed out, the feet, so it takes a lot of movement for an individual to actually go for a weapon or even have do anything that wouldn't be what the officers are expecting.
So yeah, at this point, we'll go ahead and play this video for you now. And as another pointer, this is occurring at about the same time as the other event that's occurring down actually in the street. We're not sure which couple is the couple that the callers called about for certain here. So I'll go ahead and let Lieutenant Norton play this video.
Hands behind your back, sir. You're just being detained at the second. We had a report that someone had a gun, okay?
Did you hear any gunshots down here?
Nope. Are you hurt at all? No. Do you have any injuries to you, sir? No. Okay. I'm Sergeant Corey Coker. This is Officer Brian Ingram with the Urbana Police Department. We're going to roll you on your side, okay? We're going to pat you down for weapons. We had a gentleman who claimed that he had a gun, okay, and he put the gun back in his waistband and he shot himself accidentally, so we just want to make sure that you're not the guy, okay? So, thank you for your cooperation. What's your name, bud? We're going to bring your knees up to your chest, and we'll stand you up. Here, just do like this. Bring your knees up this way.
Let's walk over here on the other side of your car.
It's at this point where the officers that are down on Cottage Grove began to address Ms. Lewis and Mr. Busby. So they're going to move this juvenile behind the car so they can finish speaking with him.
Just because I don't know what they got going over here, and I don't want to be in any kind of line of fire.
Stick him in the car.
Do you have anything on you you shouldn't have?
So one of the other points that has been brought up numerous times with regards to this incident has to do with the usage of the long guns, the rifles, and why were they needed. And essentially the answer is this: armed subjects in this open air environment dictates some rifles deployed. So when we have longer distances to cover, whether that's outside like this event, whether that's a school shooter, whether that's in a shopping mall, those longer distances, we want the officers to have some tactical advantage, and that long gun, that rifle is that advantage. They are indeed more accurate than officers with a pistol when we start to stretch the distances out farther. So that is why one of the points that's been brought up many times, I just wanted to say that as we kind of move into the next video here. This is Sergeant Cervantes' body cam video. We will go and play this one here now, and we will have some other points to make as this goes along.
So as this video starts, Sergeant Cervantes is on his way up the hill in Crestview Park to assist the other two officers up there with the first juvenile when, if you remember from the dispatch, Officer Marquez redirects Sergeant Cervantes to come back down to Cottage Grove and address the two that match the description from the dispatch that are in front of his car. So that's how this video starts.
For. I'll be out with one. Hey, buddy, show me your hands. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Both hands. Show me your hands. Both hands. Come over this way, man. Hands! Keep your hands where I can see them.
So as you can tell in the first few seconds here, he's asked to see his hands 5 or 6 times. people will harm us with their hands, or will harm others. Most people, as a matter of fact, the report was male subject with a gun. And Lieutenant Norton can fill in a little bit more, but most people will keep those sorts of things in their waists, and we want to be able to see their hands. It's critically important for officer safety discussions.
So typically when people aren't on a shooting range or in some kind of law enforcement or security, they don't carry holsters. A lot of times they'll carry their guns in their waistbands, and even sometimes with concealed carry, they'll carry guns in their waistbands. So that's where we want to keep people's hands away from their waist, if possible at all times, especially when there's an armed subject call.
Dude, we got a report of somebody with a gun. Get down on your knees. Get down on your knees. Hey! Down on your knees.
Get down on your knees right now.
Down on your knees.
Down on your knees.
Do not reach. Do not. Get down on your knees.
Get down on the ground.
A unit on Cottage Grove coming in from the south side.
Away from your way.
Are you hurt, man?
Away from your way. Am I hurt? Arms out to your side.
Dude, are you hurt? No. Okay, you're limping a little bit.
I wanted to stop for just a second to point out something that both Sergeant Coker did, that you just saw, and that Sergeant Cervantes also did. Number one, they told them why they were being stopped. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, we don't always do that, but they both, in both of these encounters, told them why they are being stopped. In addition, both sergeants asked if they were injured, if there were any injuries. As you recall from the initial information, they would report that perhaps the subject had been shot. So both sergeants do that, and I think that's important to point out in a tense, rapidly evolving sort of event like this.
Put your arms out to your side. Thank you, both of you.
Ma'am, get down for me. Just get all the way down.
Ma'am, stand up for me now.
The guy, stand up and walk towards us.
Away from your waist. Keep your hands away from your waist. Stand up. You want to get shot? I will shoot you. You understand? I hope your body if you put your
It's on.
your waist again, you will be shot. Do you understand? Are you your body camo?
Yes, it's on. Come on.
Straight towards me. You put your hands to your waist, you will get shot. Do you understand?
Because of what somebody else said. And
Walk
you a
towards
female,
me.
so you need to get your job done and come
Towards
search
me.
me so I can go the fuck home.
Towards me. Towards me. Keep walking. Towards me. Over here. Hey, pay attention.
That's all I just walked out.
Okay, well, you need to listen to instructions.
I
You
don't
need
think
to
I'll
stop.
look. So if you're a female, come search me.
I ain't a female.
So why is he being arrested?
He's not being arrested. Relax. Follow what we're saying.
Relax. But y'all just want us over for no motherfucking reason. So I want to know the explanation to that. So one of y'all officers needs to come over here and explain.
Okay.
If I'm not being
Keep eyes on her, Sarge.
Stop walking.
Well, I'm gonna walk home.
Well, you ain't finna walk home. You finna walk away. You finna go to jail. You got him. You got him.
Because what? Because
Come here.
Because what?
Come here.
Because what?
Come here.
You don't
Turn
even
around.
know my name.
Turn around.
You don't even know my name.
Turn around. Oh, fuck. I fucking broke my fucking thumb. Stop!
Bitch, you just hit me in my face. I hope you got that on camera. I hope you got that on camera.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Here, pull that back.
Stop resisting.
Okay, just
Stop
relax.
resisting.
I'm not close.
I got it.
I think I fucking broke
You
my
a
thumb.
racist
Okay.
ass bitch. And I hope y'all got this
Stop.
on camera.
Just keep your hands
I hope
back
you
here.
got this on camera. Bitch, you just grabbed me for no reason. Fuck. You a racist ass bitch.
Stop resisting! Stop
And
resisting!
you just kicked me, bitch.
Put your hand behind your back.
Stop resisting.
I got it.
Fuck. Get out. Just relax. Calm down.
That's how I'm supposed to relax you. I'm scraping my face on the concrete. You fucking pig.
Here, she's gonna come out of this.
Fucking pig.
I got
Because
it.
I would have asked a question.
Well, you don't approach us. We got guns and stuff.
Bitch,
We're trying to
who
stop
are
people.
you? You are nobody but with a badge. You're just like me, bitch. Literally.
You need to act like a lady. You're not right now.
Fuck. Okay,
Make it
get the
347.
fuck off
We've
me.
got
I
one more
6
detained.
men on me.
Stand up. We're
What's
good. We're
wrong
good.
with y'all?
We got 32.
Now get the fuck off me.
You got 32?
So, I know that was a lot to watch right now, and we're going to try to unpack a little bit of this. And we'll actually have a little bit of clearer view when we get back to the other, when we watch another section of video. I wanted to point out that with regards to this event, that the status of this young lady as a female, Ms. Lewis, is not necessarily relevant to our analysis. And I'm going to let Lieutenant Norton speak for just a second on that.
So, yeah, I've been here for a little over 20 years, and I've had many arrests. Some were female, and some were ones where females actually fought the police. There may be some kind of misconception, but a female can be just as deadly or just as hurtful and be just as powerful as some males. I've had myself been tried several times by female arrestees, and it doesn't matter male or female. It's determination, maybe what somebody may be under the influence of, but they can be just as harmful and just as capable as a male.
One of the things, another thing that has been brought up has to do with de-escalation techniques. And in this particular instance, I want to point out again that at the time, it was unclear who had a gun. We had some initial information, but when we deal with armed subjects, especially in a male-female couple, it's unclear who might have it. Sometimes the guns are passed from one to the other. The officers don't know who's armed. And to have de-escalation in this particular instance, we needed to make sure that the scene was secured right there. This is occurring at 4:30 on Good Friday afternoon. There are other people out. As a matter of fact, you will see cars out. We cannot at this point, due to this environment, be able to engage in de-escalation tactics that are a negotiation, and she was not willing to negotiate. So things like deflection phrases and minimization techniques and offers of cooperation or paraphrasing, those things at this point, the officers want to stabilize this situation as quickly as possible. And that means securing the subjects, frisking for weapons based on that initial detention, and then we can begin to untangle what may or may not have happened. As a matter of fact, the young man on that you saw the very first video of, I believe in 12 minutes, he was ultimately released and sent on his way because he had cooperated with the police, and we were able to sort it out and determine he indeed was not involved. We're going to move on to, this is Sergeant Cervantes' squad car video. This is a little bit of a fisheye sort of view. You'll be able to see there's quite a bit that will happen in this particular viewpoint. You will see the officers in the distance over by off to the left side there. You'll see the squad car pull in for who are dealing with the very first subject that we showed you. We will also be able to see Sergeant Cervantes in this camera angle here, and you'll be able to see a real critical point with regards to his viewpoint when Ms. Lewis starts to walk away, and where his eyeballs are when she turns and starts to come back. Because again, I think that's important for some of this analysis.
hands. Show me your hands. Both hands. Come over this way, man. Hands! Keep your hands where I can see them. Dude, we gotta report somebody with a gun. Get down on your knees. Down on your knees. Both. Hey! Down on your knees. Get down on your knees right now. Down on your knees. Down on your knees. Do not reach. Do not. Get down on the ground. Get down on the ground. Right now. Keep your hands away from your waist. Keep your hands away from your waist. Arms out to your side. Dude, are you hurt? Okay. You're limping a little bit. Okay. Put your arms out to your side. Thank you, both of you. Hands get down, please. Get all the way down. Well, yeah, we'll do the male first. Male, stand up for me now. Stand up for me. Keep your hands away from your waist. Keep your hands away from your waist. Stand up. Do you want to get shot? I will shoot you. Do you understand? If you put your hands next to your waist again, you will be shot. Do you understand? 47's gonna get the man.
So I meant to pause it right there to kind of explain that. I know it's sometimes that something like that, it's hard for people to hear or to understand, but just like I explained before, people are carrying guns on the street most of the time, they're in their waist. And the officer, Officer Ruff in the video is telling him under no certain circumstances, keep your hands away from your waist, because you pull something out of your waistband, you'll probably get shot. And that needs to be very clear for everybody who may have a gun.
I will shoot you. Do you understand? If you put your hands next to your waist again, you will be shot. Do you understand? 47's gonna get the man. Hands up, walk straight towards me. You put your hands to your waist, you will get shot. Do you understand? Walk towards me. Towards me. Towards me. Over here, towards us. Towards me. Keep walking. Towards me. Over here, hey, pay attention. Okay, well, you need to listen to instructions. You're going to get shot.
You may have noticed as he walked back on his right leg, he sort of was walking a little bit funny, and we know from the hindsight of this particular video that indeed he did have a malfunctioned handgun that most likely started in his waistband and then slid down his right pant leg and was ultimately caught in the material with the cuff at the bottom of his right leg there. As a matter of fact, the material was so tightly cuffed, the officers had to lower his pants somewhat to reach down from the top in order to actually get the gun out of his leg there. Now again, the officers at this point are trying to stabilize this. They are now going to, at this particular point, they will bring Mr. Busby back to the hood area of a second squad car and try to get him at least initially detained. And so that they now want to do the same thing with Ms. Lewis. They simply are going to want her to come back to them. It's at about this time that the YouTube video that many people have seen and referenced is starting from down near the apartments, if you will, south of this particular location. So what will happen here is Sergeant Cervantes will have a decision to make when she begins to walk away, remembering that they're on a call for service of a shot fired and a subject injured. In the grand scheme of calls for service, at the top you might put active shooters at a school. This is right beneath that. This is an active shooter that was moments before the officers got there. but they don't know who has what. And that's why they are making some of these decisions. So we're going to go ahead and play this. I encourage you to watch off to the left. You'll be able to see Sergeant Cervantes when he comes into the screen. And then you also see, as Ms. Lewis is down the street, starts to turn to walk away after she told him she was leaving. She turned and she began to walk south. You will see Sergeant Cervantes look back at the other officers to see if they're stabilized and secure enough, because at this point, he's got a decision to make right then immediately. Do I let a potentially armed subject walk down the street, or do I not take any action? And I think we'll go ahead and watch this.
I ain't a female. He's in the chamber. I'm not being arrested. He's trying to relax. He's not listening. Keep eyes on her, Sarge. Stop walking. Well, you ain't finna walk home. You finna walk away. You finna go to jail. You got her? You got her? Yeah.
So when Sergeant Cervantes approaches Miss Lewis, he basically tries soft hand or open hand controls. It was a level 3 to put her in handcuffs. And you'll see her immediately spin and deliver an uppercut to Sergeant Cervantes.
I also think it's important to note here that he's getting ready to take off. As a matter of fact, remember the last thing that he saw was her walking. When he initially comes walking away, when he initially comes into the screen, you'll see him looking back to the other officers. Are you okay? Or you got him, or verbiage to that effect. He then starts to go at a fairly high rate. When he sees her, she stopped and she'd walked back. And he's committed at this point to, I'm out in front of that car now. I'm going to slow from running up on her to a quick paced walk, because I think it is the best way to close the distance that he has to cover before she can reach for a firearm or a gun that is in her waist. Fully understand that it's not in her hands. That's been brought up numerous times. Remember, he doesn't know if she's armed or not, and he just wants to simply use soft hands to quickly frisk, detain and frisk, and it does not quite turn out that way.
Got 32. You got 32. Take her custody. Perfect. Stop. Slow down. There, stay back. Stay on that sidewalk. We got a 32 over here. 43. Wait till you get her out of control. Stay where you are. Move up here. He has a 32 on his hand. He has a 32. Yeah, we haven't got it yet.
You might have heard some of the language in the back from one of the other officers who was there, noting that there was a 32, which is the state police 10 code for gun. So they had at least discovered that gun in the pants and were relaying that information to those 3 officers there. I hope people could at least pick that up, and I suppose you can watch this as many times as you want. online, but you can see that indeed Sergeant Cervantes, where he was looking when she stopped to walk back. And I also think it's important to note for the record that she had an immediate history of not necessarily complying with their orders. As a matter of fact, there's a car down the street there. There's a couple of the cars that are in the area that were, despite Sergeant Cervantes' efforts, had come into sort of this the area where they were working. So I hope that shows a little bit more about her initial reaction. As a matter of fact, if you saw that she does, it looks like deliver an uppercut to Sergeant Cervantes immediately as she spins out. And it's at that point that he then tries to take her to the ground. That's usually a safer place for us to try and work. Lieutenant, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, anything you saw from this video, you saw from this video and the last video, that when he did take her to the ground, it's when he broke his thumb and essentially became one-handed.
At the next slide, we will go into Officer Ruff's body camera. As you go through this, you will indeed see, we know that we heard from Sergeant Cervantes that he recognized fairly quickly that he was one-handed in the fight. And Officer Ruff comes up to help him. At this time, he's the only officer who's available. You'll see Sergeant Corey Coker come down from the hill. I think we just saw that in that fisheye camera. But there were 7 Urbana police units, 8 total officers working that day. One was a training car, so the one officer was riding with a field training officer. And you will see that ultimately 7 units, 8 officers, 7 units, and all 7 of them were involved in this particular incident at some point. Officer Ruff is the only one who's immediately available to help Sergeant Cervantes when he goes out to try to detain and frisk Ms. Lewis. And as, of course, has been pointed out already in the other video, that he does have his patrol rifle out. And so he wants to maintain that. He just can't simply take it off his sling and lay it down on the street. There is no one else to go. So Officer Ruff has to contain that or hold that rifle, make sure that rifle is in a safe position as possible. And now he only has that one hand available. So essentially we have 2 officers, 2 hands, instead of 4 officers and 4 hands. So Lieutenant, anything else? Okay, and we will go ahead and run this video. This one is fairly long. It's approximately 9 minutes.
347's out with 422.
Down on your knees.
I'm behind you.
Hey, down on your knees.
Get down on your knees right now. Down on your knees. Get down on the ground. Get down on the ground right now. Keep your hands away from your waist. Keep your hands away from your waist. Arms out to your side. Okay. Okay. Put your arms out to your side. Thank you, both of you. Well, yeah, we'll do the male first. Male, stand up for me now. Stand up for me. Keep your hands away from your waist. Keep your hands away from your waist. Stand up. Do you want to get shot? I will shoot you. Do you understand?
Walk towards.
If you put your hands next to your waist again, you will be shot. Do you understand?
47's gonna give commands. Walking towards.
Hands up, walk straight towards me. You put your hands to your waist, you will get shot. Do you understand? Okay, walk towards me. Towards me. Towards me.
Over here, towards us.
Towards me. Keep walking. Towards me.
Over here, this
Hey, pay attention. Okay, well, you need to listen to instructions. You're going to get shot.
Oh.
You got him? You're being detained right now. We tried to explain it to you, but you guys are not listening. Got one detained. Just keep eyes on her, Sarge. Yeah. 25, come up here.
So what would typically happen here is they would frisk Mr. Busby, secure him, put him in the car, and then they would call Miss Lewis back and do the same thing in a perfect world.
Stop! Bitch, you just hit me in my face. I hope you got that on camera. I hope you got that on camera.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting right now. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Here, I got it. I got him. Okay.
And I hope y'all got this on camera. I hope you got this on camera. Bitch, you just grabbed me for no reason. What? You are racist ass bitch.
Stop resisting.
Stop resisting. And you just kicked me, bitch.
Put your hand behind your back.
Stop resisting.
I got it. Get out.
Bitch, I'm supposed to relax you. I'm saving my face on the concrete. You fucking pig.
She's gonna come out of this.
Fucking pig.
Which way?
Because I would have asked a question.
Well, you don't approach us. We got guns and stuff.
Bitch,
We try to stop people.
You are nobody but with a badge. You're just like me, bitch, literally.
You need to act like a lady. You're not right now.
Okay,
Make that 347. We've got one more detained.
men on me.
Stand up. We're good. We're good.
Now get the fuck off of me.
You got 32? On him? Yeah. Mike, you're out here.
Get off of me.
No.
Your ass big as hell. And I have ass.
So one of the things as she was interacting with Sergeant Cervantes, you'll hear a lot of discussion regarding being stopped. I think it was because of what somebody said. And indeed, there was and that she's somewhat correct in that, and that there was a call to 911. There was a report of a shot fired. There was a description given. As a matter of fact, this is not an anonymous report. This is actually a report with a named reporting party, someone who's provided their name, and most tips and calls that come in, if someone does it anonymously, there's a certain weight they're given. If people give their name and where they live, those tips are given more credence, because if they're giving false information, there's potentially some recourse there. So I just wanted to point that they're given details, and these officers will respond to that, because there's a lot of discussion by Ms. Lewis when it goes to that. At this point, I'm going to let Lieutenant Norton speak a little bit about a couple of the techniques that were used in what you just witnessed there.
So Officer Ruff used what is typically known as a distraction technique or a stunning technique, and what his target area was the brachial nerve bundle behind the ear of Miss Lewis. And what those essentially are designed to do are weaken the subject's resistance by changing their thought process. Basically, a break stake to short circuit the response mechanism to make somebody flinch. So while they're concentrating on one thing, we distract them with another to help get them into some kind of control hold. I think they have little effect in this circumstance, but that was the goal and that was the intent. These type of techniques are taught nationwide. They're not anything new. And keep in mind, she's at a level 4 right now, fighting with the police officers. So those techniques and even different or more strikes, or are they're authorized. What Officer Ruff used were small distraction strikes in an attempt to get Ms. Lewis to comply so he could, in fact, get her in handcuffs.
And as a matter of fact, you can hear them done in conjunction with the command to stop. So these weren't done out of any position other than to get her to comply. I've probably watched these videos more than most, and that her left hand continues to reach down and under her body throughout the course of the interaction at various times. And they really do struggle with that. And then that's partly because of Sergeant Cervantes on that side of her body only has one hand to try and work with. Lieutenant, would you, I guess, speak a little bit with regards to the legs, please, sir?
So what's going to happen next, or what you'll see next, is Sergeant Cervantes will get off Ms. Lewis. Sergeant Coker already has. Officer Ruff will cross Ms. Lewis's legs and bend them up towards her buttocks, and that essentially, straightens out the hamstring muscle or the thigh muscles and makes her legs a little bit weaker. You'll also see her. She'll start grabbing at things on his waist, like he has his ammunition there, sidearm on his side, and other things on his waistband we don't want people to grab a hold of. So he actually pulls her arms up over her back. The body has a natural resistance, and he goes to where that natural resistance is. He's not hurting her. Some people are more flexible than others, and she's very flexible, so her aims go a little bit higher than most. But it's not hurting her. It's keeping her pinned to the ground until I get another vehicle there to put her in.
Now get the fuck off of me.
You got 32? On him? Yeah. Mike, you're out here.
So what you see Officer Ruff doing right there, he checked the handcuffs for proper fitness, and he's double locking them so they don't tighten up, regardless of how much activity happens. The handcuffs won't tighten up after they're double locked.
Get off of me.
No.
Your ass big as hell. And I have asthma.
Stop grabbing. Stop grabbing.
That don't hurt. You a pussy anyway. Let me go.
I don't want to hurt you.
Go. Okay, then let me the fuck go.
No, you're not going to be grabbing.
Let me the fuck go. I didn't touch nothing there. One of y'all, so if y'all cameras is on.
Camera's on the whole time.
Let my arm go.
No.
Let my arm go. Cause somebody
just relax, ma'am, okay?
He record this.
She can breathe.
He punched me in my stomach, and I'm a whole female. He's not even supposed to be touching me because there's no females on site. Fuck is you talking about?
That is inaccurate,
My
ma'am.
name is Aaliyah Lewis.
Okay, thank you.
Fuck, and my OG work at the courthouse, so you won't be hearing.
Okay.
What?
Okay. We tried to explain what's going on, ma'am.
Well, let me the fuck go. You ain't trying to explain shit. Because first of all, you ain't shit without a badge. You hear me?
Okay, that's your opinion.
You just like me. So talk to me with respect.
Well, we tried. We tried.
No, you told me to calm the fuck down and I'm a grown ass woman.
No, I never said that.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And your body camera gonna show that shit.
Body camera will show everything. That is correct, ma'am.
Now let these handcuffs
If I can get another unit up here, help me get
Let
this
these
steam on the car.
handcuffs go.
Just a second, okay?
Let them go. It's tight on my fucking wrist.
Don't pull against them, ma'am, and they're not going to apply pressure. Come here.
Bro, let me the fuck go.
All right, stand up, please. Okay. All right, we're going to walk to the car. Ma'am, yes.
Where's my
we will.
phone? Fuck that. Can you get my fucking phone?
We're going to get your stuff.
Get my shit now. What the fuck?
No, it's not how that works.
Bro, give me my
So Ms. Lewis will begin asking for her phone. There is property left, as a matter of fact. I think her flip-flops, her pair of flip-flops are out on the street there. Officers do get them once they get her detained in the car, which is a little more difficult, I think, than maybe they were expecting. But there was not a phone in her property there. And as a matter of fact, as officers have retraced steps earlier, they did not find a phone out either. So.
Bro, give me my shit. Give me my shit.
Relax, relax. Okay, relax. Why are you doing this? We do not want to hurt you.
Because you just came up on us for no fucking reason. That's why.
Have a seat.
That's why.
Have a seat, please.
Stop. Look, I'm a quit.
So obviously what you saw there was when she spit on both officers here. And we'll see this a little bit better in another video in a bit later here from Officer Rich. But right now that's the spit, and you ultimately see them put on a spit hood. Lieutenant Norman, do you mind explaining a spit hood?
So a spit hood is just a mesh hood, like a mosquito netting hood. Doesn't restrict any kind of breathing, doesn't tighten up around the neck. It's just to put on somebody's head so they don't continuously spit on other people or the officers. What you're also going to see is that she'll keep kicking either the doors or the officers. So they're going to put what's called a hobble on her to restrain her legs from kicking, and as well as the seatbelt to try to keep her in place in the backseat of the car.
And the hobble does a couple of things. It protects her legs, it protects the cars from getting all beat up, and it does protect anyone who's in any officer in the area.
We got a spit hood in there.
You're gonna stay right like that.
Fuck you when I spit in your face again, bitch.
Okay. Make that 347. We've got more than a spit hood in the back of a car.
Stay here. Stay. Just let me out of these handcuffs or you break my fucking arm. And that's the case on y'all.
gotta stay
I'm relaxed. Get this shit off my fucking face, first of all.
Nope. You spit on us, wear that hood.
Fuck you,
Shut the door.
Shut the door.
Get the hobble out.
Fuck wrong with y'all? Let me go. I need my phone. That's all I need.
Got her? Oh. Get her out that way.
Give me my phone. Give me my phone.
There you go.
Give me my phone. Give me my phone. That's all I want. And you ain't even get a description of my stupid gun. The fuck? I'm a whole female bitch, and you handling me like I'm a grown ass man.
Relax, please. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Ooh, you lucky bitch. You so lucky. You so lucky.
Put it in the pull. There you go. Pull to make it tight. There you go.
That goes all the way to the door.
No. Just put this down. I can't. My fucking thumb's done, dude. There you go. Now you can tie that up there.
Make that 347.
Where we going right now? She can go, yeah.
Make that 347.
Get her identified, get her out. 347, make it, go ahead.
Mark time. The female detainee is in a split hood and in a hobble. Please let county jail know she's combative.
I want to point out a couple things. You can hear Officer Ruff did this a couple different times where he's made a note over the air to the radio dispatcher so that they can mark certain times down on the dispatch ticket. None of these things are done and try to secret and try to hide that. The hood and the hobble and the detention are things that we have actually put onto the dispatch ticket. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take a second here with regards to the dispatch ticket, the timestamps on some of the dispatch ticket. I know there's been some discussion regarding time, and without, I guess, regards to the exact seconds, but for purposes of this presentation, the call came in at 4:34 p.m. on Friday. At 4:36 p.m., it was marked as dispatched. At 4:40 p.m., the officers began to arrive. At 4:42, Mr. Busby was marked as detained, and at 4:44, Ms. Lewis was marked as detained. So from the call to Ms. Lewis being detained, That was 10 minutes. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear for the record. So at this point, we're going to transition over now to Officer Raymond Rich. Officer Rich's body camera here, and this is as he's pulling up to assist with Ms. Lewis.
Let me the fuck go.
All right, stand up, please. Ma'am, yeah.
Where's my
you will.
phone? Fuck that. Give me
Quit,
my fucking
quit.
phone.
We're gonna get your
Give
stuff.
my shit now. What the fuck?
No, it's not how that works. All right,
Bro, give me my shit. Give me my shit.
relax. Okay, relax.
Stop kicking.
Why are you doing this? We do not want to hurt you.
Because you just came up on us for no fucking reason. That's why.
Have a seat.
That's why.
Have a seat, please.
Stop.
Look, I'm a
Quit.
You got a spit hood in there?
Yeah. Left door. Driver's door.
You got it.
Let my arm go. You broken my fucking arm.
No one is breaking your arm. You just spit, you're gonna say right like that.
Fuck you when I
Stop.
spit in your face again, bitch.
Okay. You got one that's spit hood in the back.
Stay here. Stay. Just.
Let me out of these handcuffs or you break my fucking arm. And that's the
stay
case
relaxed.
on y'all.
You gotta stay
I'm
relaxed.
relaxed. Get this shit off my fucking face, first of all.
No. You spit on us.
Bitch,
That hood.
fuck you.
Shut
and
the door.
Fuck you too, bitch.
Get the.
Got her? Hey, come on.
Get her out that way.
Give me my phone. That's all I want. Give me my fucking phone. Give me my phone now.
Here you go.
Give me my phone now. Give me my phone. That's all I want. You ain't even getting a description of what's going. The fuck? I'm a whole female bitch, and you handling me like I'm a grown ass man. Ah!
Relax, please.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Ooh, you lucky bitch. You so lucky. You so lucky.
There you go. Hold, make it tight. There you go.
That goes all the way to the door.
No. Just put this down.
There's a round impact on that.
Okay.
1102 first story.
She can go as minimum for resistance.
You're cut.
Ag bat actually. She swung at me, so she can go.
She spit on me too, so. You want her going right now?
She can go, yeah. Get her identified.
You got the phone? Go.
So in this particular piece of footage, you saw her spit on the officers. Officer Rich was then able to push her over to stop that behavior. Matter of fact, she complained about her arm, and he actually repositioned her right hand. And then she went to kick the officers. After the third kick, they finally decided that it was time to hobble Ms. Lewis. I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that at this point, they still have a shooting to investigate. They still have other work to do this night. This is just, had this gone a little smoother, we wouldn't have had to have all this before they could focus their efforts on that shooting investigation. And yes, her flip flops were picked up, and there was not a phone there. The next morning at about 8:30 in the morning, Officer Rich, this same officer, was back on duty for his Saturday 12-hour shift, and he went back out to speak with Ms. Lewis. He had another matter to discuss with her. We want to show you 3 pieces of that investigation which aren't relevant to this particular event. And you'll clearly see we've marked them. You'll see some black spacing in between. There's essentially 3 sections. You'll see 2 pieces of black timing to separate the videos. But I'd like for you to listen. This is Ms. Lewis the next morning, and it's about 8:30 in the morning. This is at the Champaign County Satellite Jail.
Are you the officer?
Huh?
You the person I hit last night?
No.
Do you have a report of what happened?
Are you the officer? Are you the person I hit last night? That was the first thing she said to Officer Rich when he met her at the jail. This is now other footage taken from, this is a more lengthy section taken from their conversation.
Report of what happened last night?
Yes.
What
I'm
happened?
the one that brought you here.
For real?
Yeah. I transported you here.
What happened? Oh, no, I dead ass don't know. I woke up and I up in the room like, what the fuck and why the fuck?
Well, apparently you guys got in an argument or something, and there was a gun, and you didn't comply, and you fought us, and you kicked us and spit on us.
Was there a gun?
Yeah. You didn't have a gun, but... So yeah. It was a big deal. You could have got very hurt. What were you on?
I took a Xanax edible.
Marijuana and Xanax?
I don't know. It just said it was brown. And
I'm just
had
curious, that's why.
Xans. That's what I was.
A-X-A-N-A-X.
Yeah.
Edible. I'm just curious because you had some ridiculous strength.
I'm just strong, period.
Okay.
I don't even have my house keys. What did I come in here with?
No, I don't know. It was a shit show. We were lucky to get you here.
I was going that crazy.
Yeah.
I apologize.
All right. It happens. Don't do Xan and Xan edibles.
Yeah, I'll never do that again.
All right.
As you can see, she's a completely different person the next day. Having a pleasant conversation with the same officer who she was kicking the day before. I think at this point we're going to go through a couple more of the photos with regards to the investigation that had to go on after the officers got her out to the jail that Friday night. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so what you'll see here is 1003 Colorado. This is where Ms. Lewis and Mr. Busby came from. This is where we assume this all started. 1102 Colorado is the building where the apartment where the round impacted. This is the exterior of the apartment. The apartment's actually right here. The window is here. You'll see a little piece of the blind that's missing. See up here in this corner, here's the hole through, and even closer, here's the hole through in apartment 102. Inside 102, apartment 102, looking out, you'll notice that is the officers where you can kind of barely see the apartment 1003 right down here. But this is the officers as they were doing their investigation, the outside view. Across that, you'll see the bullet hole that impacted across the room. Keep in mind, this was an occupied apartment. We took a piece of the drywall out. You see it went through the drywall, impacted into the wood, and then we presumed fell to the bottom of this, the interior of this wall, and didn't proceed into any other rooms, thank God. This is the loaded pistol that was recovered from the pant leg of Mr. Busby. It had ammo in the magazine. It was malfunctioned. Evidently, Mr. Busby didn't know how to clear it, clear the malfunction. As you know, there could have been more of a danger. There could have been more rounds shot from the gun. We don't know, but we feel we're lucky that the gun malfunctioned. This is Sergeant Cervantes. He obviously has this wound here and also a broken thumb and will not be back to work anytime soon.
I've got some more, a couple more things that I'd like to point out here with regards to the steps of review that do happen here. When officers use force, and I guess, Jared, do you mind if can I finish up with this, or is that good? Okay. When officers use force, I'll back up. We use, and I think the mayor might have said this within the last week or so, we go on about 25,000 calls for service per year. We use force anywhere between 100 and 150 times. When one of those events occurs, a sergeant does an initial review right away, an uninvolved sergeant. That night, Sergeant Cortez Gardner came in, did an initial review to see if there was any glaring issues or problems. As a matter of fact, he wants to make sure the reports are done. He wants to look at some video. As a matter of fact, we also want to interview the subject on whom the force was used. Sergeant Gardner tried to do that on Friday night, but Ms. Lewis was still, I think, in a state of mind similar to what you had seen her interacting with the police earlier, and was in no position to provide any sort of statement to the police. Then the best information we got from her really was with Officer Rich the next morning, which is why we've included it here in addition to in the police report. When these things were brought up, this event obviously caused some social media outcry. And on that Friday night initially, I was aware that an incident occurred, and then we began to hear more on Saturday morning. And so then I came in, a couple of members of our command staff came in and tried to review as much as we could. We read every police report that had been written. We had watched several pieces of this video and had to get to a certain comfort level with what had happened. Does that mean that there couldn't be different ways to do this? No, as a field training officer, there's wrong or different is a continual message that we consider. But in this case, we have to consider whether it was, again, within policy and or within the law. And those were the discussions that we had that day. Something else that has come up a few times, I guess at least, had to do with the press release that was pushed out. Please understand that that's an attempt to summarize police reports. That's an attempt to summarize information gathered from squad car video, attempt to summarize body cam video, and somehow try to package it in something that's relatively short. 2 pages for a press release is actually rather lengthy. Traditionally, our press releases are around a page. So we did feel this deserved more context, more information than we normally would share. In addition to administration reviewing, there's a use of force review board, use of force committee. Sometimes you'll hear it, made up of officers. And yes, they are indeed here from the Urbana Police Department. There would be sergeants, guys come from firearms backgrounds, or defensive tactics backgrounds, or detectives versus patrol officers. So there's hopefully lots of different perspectives that make up the use of force review board. They do then review it and compare the actions that they've seen and that they've read about with the policies that the department has. I believe the mayor spoke of that, and I think that their report, typically we do these quarterly, but due to because this event has caused some concern, we had them move up and make a concerted effort to try to get this done as quickly as they could. And their final report was issued late this afternoon, and it was forwarded to council. I will just say, and cutting to the chase here, although there's multiple paragraphs explaining things, in the conclusion, the use of force review board determined the officer's actions were within department policy and procedure. And again, I know I'm sure there are people that are shaking their head right now, but I encourage you to, in light of all the information you've just watched and learned, to actually read through the document, and we will make that available as well. Finally, the state's attorney's office has agreed to review this matter to ensure that the officer's behavior was appropriate under the law. And I can't necessarily speak for Julie Reed's time frame, but she has been made aware of this and has seen videos and watched the police reports. I want to make a couple other comments here, because there has been a lot of discussion with regards to this and investigations and other entities doing things. For those who've been on council for a little while, you may have heard the presentation that had been given with regards to the Champaign County multi-jurisdictional investigative team. That's a team of detectives from neighboring agencies, not from the affected agency, but from neighboring agencies who come and investigate incidents under the supervision of the Illinois State Police to look into matters of serious uses of force. That is force likely to cause death or great bodily harm. That team also works on in-custody death cases. This event did not rise to that level. As such, we use our internal mechanisms to ensure that things were done within policy. As a matter of fact, I am not aware of any injuries suffered by Aaliyah as a result of this encounter. I think I want to, at least at this point, let Lieutenant Norton speak to a point he's made, as we've talked about this before, with regards to the behavior of the officers throughout this event.
Yeah, and as you watch the video, and you may watch it all again, you can see the professionalism of our officers. None of those officers took anything personal that Miss Lewis did. When she spit on him, when she kicked him, when she hit him, when she threw him an uppercut. Matter of fact, the only cussing you heard was when Sergeant Cervantes broke his thumb, understandably. There was a lot of ma'ams and please and thank you, and you know, Sergeant Corey Coker, when he talked to the juvenile up on the hill, explained everything very eloquently. When you know, Mike or Sergeant Cervantes was trying to speak with them originally, you know, trying to explain everything that was going on. So you'll see throughout this, even all the way till they get to the jail and the next day, very, very professional, and never took anything personal. And I think that's to be noted, because I challenge a lot of people when they're spit on or kicked to stay professional, and this department and these officers did that, and they deserve that recognition.
I guess the last couple of points I wanted to make, that I wanted to make it clear. I know that the state's attorney's office is the one who charges cases, not the city of Urbana or the police chief. The Champaign County State's attorney makes charging decisions with regards to crimes occurring within our county. I guess I will try to close this with regards to, again, and I've mentioned this briefly before, something that I learned from Bruce Sokoloff, one of our, who's taught lots of police officers field training. And one of the points that he drives home is the behavior wrong or different? And that's sort of one of the guiding principles when I have to review these particular matters. Is it exactly what I would do? there's 60 officers, there might be 60 different sort of recipes to try to make that. We give officers principles and we give them guidelines, but they sometimes have to make decisions in a split second. And there's no better decision, there's no better example of that than Sergeant Cervantes at the front of that car. I understand why people have said certain things, but I want people who look at this and analyze this need to understand that he had a short amount of time to decide what he needed to do there. So again, the questions are, was the behavior within policy? And to that I would answer yes. And was the officer's behavior legal? And to that I would answer yes. But of course, that will be pending further review by the state's attorney's office. So I think at this point we will unshare the screen, I believe, and we'll take some questions from council.
Thank you, Chief. I do want to tell people I'm having two computers going, so the camera that is pointing toward me and the audio is coming from one, but the screen that I actually can see you all on is a different screen. So if I look like I'm not pointing in the right direction, I'm probably not, but I can hear and see everything. Are there any questions for Chief? And I'll see if I can get everybody. Okay. From council members, do you have any questions?
I think Jared was first.
Jared, go ahead.
One comment before my first question. I'm sure other folks will have some as well. Chief, I don't know, you probably have no idea how to see what we see on our end, and I don't know how everyone else got to see those videos, but when we watched them in our briefing, obviously I made a comment about how unusual I thought it was that those body cameras could pick up almost everything that Alea Lewis was saying. And in the stream, I've got i3 broadband and pretty good internet at my house. I couldn't hear anything she was saying in almost any of the videos except for portions of where she was screaming. They cut in and out a lot. And I know when we watch them, it's continuous clean footage. So I don't know if we need to consider uploading your presentation independently, but I'm pretty sure that what's going to be viewable through this UPTV recording is not going to be very representative of what we were able to see. So I just want to I don't know what everybody else's experience was with that. Other council members can comment if they were able to see the fluid video or not. Large portions of it, I could only see 1 out of every 10 frames. You know, the image would change every 5 seconds or so, and I couldn't hear much at all of the audio that was going on. So you guys could probably see and hear it just fine on your computer there, but us at home couldn't, and I'm sure a lot of the general public couldn't as well. So that was just one comment. My initial question is about the domestic violence issue between Ms. Lewis and Kamarian, and has there been any charges pressed by her, or is there an investigation ongoing into the nature of the incident that led to them leaving the apartment and him firing the weapon outside the apartment?
Is Julia Reitz still in the meeting? Doesn't appear to be.
Since she's not here or signed out or is having technical difficulties, statements, we were not able to get any statements from either Mr. Busby or Ms. Lewis that would support domestic violence between them. I know that he had some discussion with a prior female friend that had gotten him to some degree irritated. I think, as we had said before, I know that there was a canvas of that her apartment complex where the officers had been while they were trying to initiate or conclude their investigation. So that was the apartment in the beginning of 1003 East Colorado. There was a casing found out front there, and there clearly was some disheveling of their apartment with a lamp over and some food strewn about. But we've not gathered any information that would lead to charges that I'm aware of for any kind of domestic violence in their relationship.
Jared, I called the state's attorney this morning and asked specifically about that because people have assumed that it was a domestic violent event that led to all this. And she said that based on the statements they've obtained in the investigation and also independent witness statements during the investigation, there's no evidence to support the assumption of domestic violence. There apparently was an argument in the apartment about a cell phone, but the charges in this case are one, unlawful discharge of a firearm, felon in possession of a firearm, reckless discharge of a firearm, and that's for Mr. Busby. And for Ms. Lewis, it was 3 counts of aggravated battery to a police officer, scratching, kicking, and spitting, and 1 count of felony resisting a police officer for the broken thumb. But there, again, was not enough evidence or not evidence to support the contention that domestic violence was a factor here. There was an argument, however.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have any more questions?
I'll save my other ones.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, thanks. I have a few questions. I'll ask 1 or 2 and then give other people a chance. First, I did have a question from a constituent about the video that was shown. Since there are charges being against Miss Lewis, did she provide a release, or did her attorney provide a release for us to show those videos?
No, that's a consideration by the state's attorney, and we did review all of this with the state's attorney, with Ms. Reeds, prior to showing this.
Okay. And then as far as the investigation process of the use of force, you explained that a sergeant reviews it immediately and there's 100 to 150 a year. And then some portion of those go on to the use of force committee, or do all of those get reviewed? You said this one was special, it was moved up, but normally a quarterly basis. Would all 100 to 150 a year go through both of those steps?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'll let Lieutenant Norton speak to that because he actually supervised that committee.
So the 100 and 150 number, they're all reviewed by the use of force committee. If you remember, the use of force continuum starting at level 2 all the way up to the top. They all get reviewed first by a sergeant, who would go out and take initial statements, collect potential evidence, and then the committee quarterly, they would review whatever use of force reports were taken in that quarter. So in the end of the year, roughly 100, 150, but yeah, they all get reviewed by the use of force committee.
Okay, and then of those, I read through it earlier. We got it kind of late. I don't remember exactly what it said, but basically said everything was conceivably justifiable under conditions, basically the words of that effect. Of all those that are the 100 to 150 a year, how many of those say something else? And what are the other options? What are the other possibilities and outcomes from those committees, from that committee?
So you're asking what, besides within policy and within the law, you're asking how many of those 150 are not found that way?
Well, yeah, how many of those have different results, basically? And are there different levels? Like, it may not be, hopefully it isn't illegal, or it would probably be prosecuted or complained or something. If it's against policy, what happens? And is there anything at a lower level than against policy where there's a recommendation or something else?
Yeah, I would say frequently that, well, I wouldn't say frequently, but a lot of the times when they find something that needs addressed, it's mostly a training issue. So they find one of their things they need to look for are patterns. You know, are people doing this when this technique would work better here, and suggest training issues or training, I guess, techniques or whatever to the Control Tactics Committee. But you know, those are different things that they look for as well. They don't just look for, is it within policy? It's how can they improve the response and quality of officer at the police department.
Okay, and then I'll just talk about one more thing and then let other people. On the de-escalation, that's come up quite a bit, and that was a focus of several of the letters that I received. I know, and investment in de-escalation techniques and training has got to be a big payoff. I know there's special circumstances you feel in this situation where there were urgent things to take care of and maybe not as much attention could have been given to de-escalation as normal. But if there had been some kind of heroic effort that had been successful, obviously we wouldn't be here tonight. You know, we wouldn't have an officer out for weeks and weeks with a broken thumb, and potentially, you know, I had a broken thumb, and I'm sure that Officer Cervantes is thinking daily about what he could have done differently where, you know, he wouldn't end up like that. I know we do some training and not everybody gets the crisis intervention training. I know he didn't have that. And we also do a lot of training with firearm weapons and regular training weekly or monthly, and they have some kind of certification. So my question that I'm getting to is there such a thing as an annual certification for de-escalation techniques? Is there any sort of reinforcing training like they get with weapons training, other than just say the, you know, the one-time, the judo, verbal judo or whatever you called it, the one-day training? What kind of ongoing de-escalation training and reinforcement is there?
So a couple things. Number one, all the officers here go through 8 hours of mental health training. So there's a crisis intervention team training, a CIT, that's a 40-hour course, and that is one that is rather involved. All of the officers go to a sort of a trimmed down version in 8 hours of mental health training. In addition, we do ongoing training. As a matter of fact, Sergeant Corey Coker, the guy at the top who dealt with that young man at the very beginning, is one of our instructors for, and I forget the exact name. It's somewhere, it's not verbal judo anymore. It's verbal persuasion and influence. And it's a kind of a training that's given to a variety of people, those in customer service, not even just police. So those techniques and some of those things that I spoke of a little bit in the beginning with regards to some of those persuasive techniques, those are things that he teaches. We'll use videos for some of those things as well to help illustrate some of the points. I do want to circle back around with regards to your initial comments that, and I had replied to this, and some of this has come back. So evidently when the email that I sent out, it made it to beyond just the one person I sent it to. But I think this might be important here. Given the circumstances involving, and this was about the de-escalation. Given the circumstances involving a potentially armed subject in a large open environment, direct commands had been given to which she did not comply. De-escalation and negotiation tactics are usually secondary when such a high risk to public safety exists. Had she been contained in a room or a apparent courtyard, we could have taken more time and employed de-escalation techniques such as deflection phrases or paraphrasing. Our number one goal in a highly volatile situation like this is simply to secure the scene.
Okay, thank you very much. And I really appreciate your effort to be transparent in all this.
Before I call on Sharice, I just was notified State's Attorney Julia Reitz is back on call. So if you have questions for her regarding the charges, she'd be happy to answer those. So Sharice and then Dennis.
Okay, what I guess my question is, were there any injuries to Miss Lewis? And what were they, if she had any injuries at all?
I am not aware of any injuries to Ms. Lewis. I can only imagine. I assume she must have a few scrapes or abrasions on her hands or cheek compared to having watched this, but I'm not aware of any issues with regards to injuries for Ms. Lewis.
Also, could you give me, and probably the public that'll be watching this, the definition and the understanding of the fact that resisting in and of itself is a violation.
So I don't know that I can quote the law to you verbatim right here now, but when they're giving lawful commands, a citizen has to obey the lawful command. He gave her numerous commands, and like I said, I think at the point that she begins to walk away, even at the point that she then pulls out of his initial grasp, that would technically be the violation of resisting / obstructing a peace officer. When she
Okay, so if, for example, if I'm stopped by the police, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If I'm stopped by the police and the officer asks me to get out of the car and I refuse to get out of the car, at that moment, can he then say that I am that I'm resisting?
Yes.
Okay, and at that time, he can also put me in handcuffs and pat me down and so on and so forth?
That's correct. Well,
So
if there's an arrest in the situation, the description you just gave me, yes, you could be placed under arrest. And when we arrest someone, a search of that person incident to that arrest is then allowed in the United States.
So it's best that when a police officer stops you, for you to just follow directions.
It does clearly make our lives much easier, yes.
Okay. For Miss Wright, the question I have for her, Miss Julie, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Is there any way or will there be any type of diminishing of the charges brought against Miss Lewis?
So, can you all hear me, Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Can you? Okay. So
Yes.
generally,
Julia?
yeah. Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, generally speaking, this is an ongoing criminal case, and I don't really want to talk about what the result of it might be. But what I can tell you is that at this point, Mr. Busby is charged with weapons offenses, aggravated discharge of a firearm, reckless discharge of a firearm, unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon. And Ms. Lewis is charged with 3 counts of aggravated battery to a peace officer for kicking the officer, for scratching the officer, and for spitting on the officer, and aggravated resisting a peace officer for resisting the lawful actions of the police officer and causing injury to that officer, that being Officer Cervantes's thumb. Those are charges that are appropriate under the evidence as we have reviewed it, and we plan on proceeding with those charges.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
For the record, I did not hear that response. I'm not sure why. Any other questions, Charisse?
No.
Okay. I think Eric has his hand up, and then Mary Alice. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Dennis. We'll just go down the line. Go ahead, Eric.
So my question is, and I guess this is directed towards Ms. Reitz also. What are the implications of this act occurring under the influence of drugs? In other words, is it appropriate? Well, okay, I don't want you to say how you're going to dispose of it, but just in the abstract, if a crime is committed and it's drug influenced, is that sometimes appropriate for diversion to drug court? Will that play a role in how this goes forward?
Certainly, substance abuse and addiction issues are ones that we want to address and have to address oftentimes through the criminal justice system. I can tell you in this situation that Ms. Lewis has a long history, and that substance abuse issues are ones that need to be addressed, and drug court might be an appropriate resolution of this case. A lot of that is up to her and her counsel, and are things that we'll be discussing as we go forward. But certainly within the criminal justice system, we put a lot of effort into trying to find the proper resolution that addresses the underlying issues and gives people an opportunity to move forward as productive citizens if they're willing to do that. So yes, that could be an option in this case. No one's saying anything, so I'm not sure if everybody.
I'm completely happy with your response. I have no further questions.
Okay, Dennis and then Mary Alice.
Dennis, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, Eric's question pretty much covered a lot of what I was wondering about. I guess what I was wondering also was that the officers could probably tell if they had any training that these people were not acting completely rationally, that there might have been a possibility that there's that they were well, they're obviously unfocused. The gentleman obviously walked in kind of a daze to the patrol car and was even unable to sort of aim himself correctly. And the woman was, you could say, verbally hyperventilating and acting very agitated. So I wondered if there was any recognition by the officers in subsequent comments that you've received from them as you explored the case, that they were aware that these subjects might not be in their normal rational state when they were interacting with them. And did that influence the choices of the ways in which they tried to interact? I guess that's for our police chief.
So yeah, I've read through all of these reports, and there's reference in them regarding some of their picking up on some of those cues. I don't know that I could speak exactly, Mr. Roberts, with regards to how that influenced all of their decisions. I will tell you that they gave numerous commands repeatedly, and I think you've watched this. And I'm sorry that for our viewers at home, we had a few technical difficulties, and we'll figure out how to get those videos up for people to see. But indeed, I think the repetition is one of those that I do believe indicated or helped to show that they were at least cognizant of some of these issues.
And then when the subjects were, when Mrs. Lewis in particular was entered at the jail in that evening, did they try to do any kind of evaluation of medical tests to find out whether there were traces of substance abuse in her body that might support it, beyond the fact that in the next day she talked about it personally?
I am not aware of any sort of biological tests or anything they would have done to confirm what she stated the next day. I know there's a medical intake that they do, but I don't know that I'm not aware of them doing any sort of chemical testing.
All right, I see. I guess I was wondering because, I mean, there might have been a question of whether she was injured even, perhaps, so I don't know. You know, to what level they make the inquiry when the person comes in originally
They do a medical intake form, and they will go down and have certain discussions. I know that, I don't know when they would have done exactly hers. I don't know, Lieutenant, if you know. I know she was uncooperative upon arrival at the jail. So I don't know at what point in the evening they would have actually been able to complete all of their booking process.
And my last question is sort of about the gunshot that was the original cause for the call. And obviously it seemed to be that the officers were immediately responding to just the detainment, and that became a huge project. And the actual discharge and the tracing of the slug in the apartment on Colorado Avenue didn't occur till the next day. And I was sort of wondering if what interaction there has been, or as far as the significance of the shot being fired and landing in a person's apartment. I mean, is there are charges about battery and assailing of a random shot also going to be faced by these people?
Well, so the investigation occurred that same afternoon.
It did.
That did not. So the interview of her occurred the following morning, but the officers going to the affected apartment at 1102 East Colorado, that occurred that night. Those photos and stuff were taken that particular night. The efforts at the apartment complex where the casing was recovered occurred that night. The canvassing efforts occurred that night. As a matter of fact, the charges that Julia Reese just spoke of were indeed for, I believe, aggravated discharge and reckless discharge of the firearm by Mr. Busby. And I was, and so those all that all occurred. Those things happened that night, that afternoon.
Well, I guess I look forward to hearing further evaluation of the events and also of the review of the actions of our police department by Julia Reitz as the independent investigator. I know that a lot of people are very concerned that proper procedures happened here. But I do appreciate the fact that we were all called in midweek to observe and watch these videos in pairs so that we could have a better understanding of what we were facing as city council members and representing the community. From the point of view is that we also are, we support the the privacy and the safety of each individual as they interact with the police, and we try to understand, and whereas we're explaining tonight exactly what the challenges were. So I appreciate the fact that we had the opportunity to come in and view that early. That's it.
You're welcome.
Mary Alice.
Well, a lot of my questions have already been answered, so thank you, everyone. My first one that I want to talk a little bit about is Jared had mentioned that the video is difficult to see. It was very jerky, so to speak. So, Chief, I'm wondering, I think one of the largest concerns that people have right now is due to the actions of the police on their initial interaction with Ms. Lewis led to a cascading of the events. So I'm wondering if, in your words, for the time being, as kind of a placeholder until everybody can view the videos, if you would be able to walk us through. I can tell you what I remember. So I'll start off, okay? So I do remember that Ms. Lewis said that she was going to go home, and the officer said, "You can't go home." And that led to their initial kind of physical interaction, right? So once she started walking back and the policeman started walking towards her and telling her that she can't go home, can you, in your words, say what you saw in that very initial interaction?
I will try. I think, and sort of what you've already spoken to, I think is important, which is to say is when Mike had to make that decision, Sergeant Cervantes, she had walked away, and I think, and I hope when people get a chance to see this, they will see that he's actually looking back because he thinks she's taken off and moving south. And so he looks back, "Are you guys okay?" And then he turns, and as he breaks that cover line of that car, he then sees, and his head spins back around. Now, oh, she's walking to me. And so she does walk up to him, and they essentially walk to get towards each other. And he's walking, he's not running, but he is walking quickly and with a purpose. And he wants to then get onto her. He essentially reaches out for that right hand. And I don't know that I would necessarily explain the technique exactly right, but as Lieutenant Norton might fix it and help correct me, he then wants to try to get that right arm behind her back. And as he starts to grab onto that arm and rotate it down, that's when she pulls out of that grasp. I don't know exactly when she scratches his face, but it's at that point that she tries to pull away, and then he tries to now continue to grab onto her, and she ultimately then gets enough distance that she's able to actually bring a right uppercut. I think is the term at his head area, and that's when he then has to use a sort of hip roll and over his right leg. And I don't know, Jason, if I'm explaining that very well, or no, so. And I think that's when then they go on to the ground.
Okay, all right, thank you. So just to be clear, well, first of all, I want to thank the chief and I want to thank the mayor for releasing the body camera video. It's something that we spoke about in terms of what could be done, and I encouraged everybody to release as much of this to the public as was possible based on what Ms. Reese would allow. So thank you very much for that. And I'm hoping that the full video that you showed today will be accessible, not in the Zoom format, but in the PowerPoint or released individually as movies or video files. So I just want to confirm that that'll be available for the public to view.
I'm not the technical guy to figure that out, but I can clearly try to help make that happen, yes.
Okay, all right.
It'll be part of the meeting record. So.
Okay, so the entire presentation will be posted on the website as part of the meeting record?
Yes.
Okay, all right. My second question, and I think perhaps this is more for Ms. Reese, and we already did talk a little bit about it, but I'd like to hear a bit about how prosecution happens. And what I mean by that is, say for example, heaven forbid we have a murder in this town. There's the people who are directly affected, of course, are their family and any of their other loved ones. But it's the state who takes the case, reviews the files, and decides what kinds of charges. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just kind of walking through my understanding of how charges are brought against an individual. So in this case, when the police do their investigation and they hand over the files for Ms. Lewis and Mr. Busby, what is that next step that the state's attorney office takes? Is there any somebody who presses charges other than the state's attorney, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
No, the prosecutor, the state's attorney, my office is the one that reviews the police reports. When the police make an initial arrest, they make an arrest based on initial charges. And that person is then booked into the jail. Then we get the police reports and review all of the reports and make the decision about what the actual formal charges are going to be. And then the person is brought in front of a judge, they're arraigned on the charges, they're appointed counsel if they can't afford their own, or they hire their own counsel. And then they have a right to have what's called a preliminary hearing, where a judge hears the preliminary evidence and makes a decision about whether there is probable cause to proceed with the case. So there's an opportunity for a review at the judge level, but the person can waive that if they want to, and just go forward on with the regular process. So the decisions about charges, the final decisions are made by the state's attorney's office. And we have reviewed this case. We've reviewed the video evidence. I've reviewed everything that you've seen. I've seen all of the police reports. I've seen all of the video. And we have decided that the appropriate charges have been filed now against Mr. Busby and against Ms. Lewis. And I keep hearing that I'm reviewing the case and making other decisions. I will just tell you all right now, I see absolutely nothing in the reports, in the video, in anything that I've reviewed to suggest that the officers did anything in violation of state law. I'm perfectly fine with their actions in this case, and we're proceeding with the prosecution of Mr. Busby and Ms. Lewis.
So where are we in that process right now?
They have been charged, they have been arraigned, and I believe they've both waived preliminary hearing, and their cases are set for what's called a felony pretrial, which will be sometime down the road. The courthouse is currently closed, and so the pretrials have been set into June.
And is Miss Lewis currently in jail?
I believe she posted bond, or someone posted bond on her behalf, and she's been released.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Reese. I think for now, those are my questions. Oh, actually, I did have one final question. And it just maybe to flesh out a little bit of what Dennis's question was in terms of medical. So under what circumstances, everybody who comes into the jail given a medical assessment in terms of physical issues? So we've talked about mental and substance abuse, but I'm wondering specifically about the physical.
So I'm going to answer that one also as the state's attorney and the lawyer for the sheriff. Yes, everyone's given a medical evaluation. If anyone has any injuries, they're taken to the hospital, Carle Hospital, if that's appropriate. We have a contract with a medical provider to provide medical care for our inmates. And of course, again, given the COVID-19 situation, we're being very, very careful with everyone as they're brought in. As you saw in the video, Ms. Lewis had a face mask on when she was coming to speak to the officer. And so she was not taken to the hospital. I don't believe there was any sign of any kind of physical injury to her. And she was combative when she was brought into the jail. That green gown that she was wearing, that is a gown that's put on somebody when we're concerned about them hurting themselves. And so all the proper precautions were taken with her in the jail when she was brought in that night.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill Colbrook and then Jared.
Chief, the initial information that you provided in your presentation has indicated that this was not a domestic violence incident, and that at least with the evidence that you know now, that the lady was not a domestic violence victim. However, there's been a lot of talk amongst the community. There's been a lot of letters that we've received in criticism of the Urbana Police Department that the officers are not trained properly in domestic violence situations. Could you speak just a little bit about maybe the prevalence of domestic violence in the city, and how many calls, if you know that offhand, that the officers respond to, and what domestic violence training that they received, whether it be in the academy, in the field training program, or anything ongoing, like trauma-informed policing or any specific trainings like that. I think it's important to the community and to the council just to kind of understand, since there has been so much criticism, what training is received by the officers.
So the Police Training Institute is where they will get their first time or their first exposure to domestic violence issues, exposed to things like the circle of violence and those things. They will then spend a lot of time in the field training program on dealing with domestic violence issues as well. And that's probably where they spend, they get the most of, I guess they get their most training within that area. Trauma informed is something that I think we as a profession have been a little late to the party for. I know that in the last couple of years, I've been to several trainings with regards to this, and to bring this up and to make sure that the officers are aware of that. However, we have certain trainings, and I won't be able to speak with regards to some of the ongoing trainings, like I know that we do with regards to the mental health and the verbal persuasion things. Those are things that I know that we've done more. I couldn't necessarily speak, and I know you can correct me, Lieutenant Norton, if I'm missing something with regards to exactly the ongoing domestic violence training outside of what they would do in like a roll call or a brief.
Well, yeah, we have ongoing training every week. Roll call training and domestic violence is one of the topics that they train on. They have certain aspects that they're required to train on annually, like the chief spoke of. There are diversity classes that people go to, or which may be an aspect of that, or our officers go to. But the mobile training unit offers different classes on domestic violence. Certainly not our whole department doesn't go to that at one time, but we try to get as many officers as we can through the mobile training unit and those classes that when they offer those. So, and I will say domestic violence is one of our highest volume calls. It's several times a day. I would guess without the numbers in front of me. But it's a regular, it's a high volume call.
I appreciate your answer. I guess I just have a comment. I think in cases like this, with such interest of the community, transparency by the police department, transparency by government is not only needed, it's called for, it's in the best interest of the community. And I just appreciate the efforts of you, Chief, and you, Lieutenant, for giving the presentation, and for the mayor as well, just to try to give as much information, shed as much light on what has happened in our community, to not only the City Council, but to the residents of Urbana and Champaign as well. Thank you.
Jared?
Let's see, what was I? One thing that I wanted to mention, we received a request for information on the Civilian Police Review Board. I just wanted to let anybody who's listening know that if you go onto the city's website under government, under boards and commissions, on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of all the boards and commissions. The Civilian Police Review Board is on the right-hand side, and if you click on it, you can go to that page and find information about the CPRB, the chair of which is Mikhail Lubyansky, and there's 6 other members and 2 members of city staff that are on it as well. One question, Julia, you weren't here when I asked this earlier, and so nobody could really comment on it. I was asking if the chief or the mayor was aware about any charges that may have been being pressed against Kamarian by Ms. Lewis, if there was any investigation into that or any charges.
I've seen nothing in any of the reports that suggests that Ms. Lewis said anything about Mr. Busby being physically abusive to her. There's a witness who sees the 2 of them arguing outside of the apartment. There's discussion. I think his mother says something about the 2 of them arguing over the phone. But Ms. Lewis never says anything to anybody about being physically abused by Mr. Busby. There's no independent witnesses to that. As Chief Seraphin said, the call came in as a shots fired call. There's just nothing in any of the reports or in any of the evidence of any indication of domestic violence.
Chief, you had mentioned that we did go into their apartment after the fact and check it out. The door was open and there was quite a mess, I remember you saying.
That's correct. There was a lamp that was knocked over, and I think there was food that had been strewn about. Yes, sir.
Do we have, Julia's mentioned a witness to seeing them arguing outside, but were there witnesses to the gunshot?
Some of the people that were there heard a shot and then saw him with the gun. I don't know if I have anyone who actually saw him firing off the gun, like actually witnessed that actual action, but heard the shot, drew their attention, and then saw him with the gun around and the magazine falling out.
Okay. Those were my last 2 questions. I guess I had one more. I'd asked after our interview the other day if we were going to get a formalized report of some kind in writing, your words and on paper, and the lieutenant's words on paper, other than just the record that we're leaving via video here. And pending any further investigation. Are we going to see that in the future at some point?
At this point, I will have to consult with my bosses to see how much further we're going to go with regards to this. I was glad that we were able to get the use of force review board findings done and authored. At this point, I guess I will say that remains to be seen. I'm hopeful that the discussion that we've had tonight and what we've been doing for the last 2.5 hours indeed shed some light on our thoughts and our opinions on what happened.
So no further discussion is expected at this time unless maybe we see something through the CPRB.
Well, if that process were to go forward, yes, indeed, then we would have to address specifically that particular process. And like I said, I guess that's what I'll tell you for now.
We haven't, just adjacently question, we haven't gotten any reviews from Michelle in a long time about our stats and where things are standing with that. When is our annual report due, or when are we going to hear from her again?
I'm sorry, you mean Melissa?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant Melissa. I'm sorry.
So yes, we will have more time with Melissa. We've been she actually has been working from home and working on some projects. So yes, we will get back on the radar. Maybe it will be in a Zoom format as opposed to in person in the council chambers. We do not have a date set though.
Okay. One final comment, Diane.
Sure. I just wanted to tell you, we also are waiting, we'll be waiting yet on the state's attorney's review of this as well.
Okay. I hope once the video is up and everyone is able to see it in real time, folks will have an understanding of this. I think the situation was an extremely difficult situation for the officers, having come into a call with the call that they got. But, we had a really long discussion about the merits of, if Sergeant Cervantes made the right call coming out behind the patrol car to pursue her or not. And then once he saw that she was walking back towards him, whether or not he, again, made the right call to continue closing that distance. I think we have an understood disagreement in those actions that whether, you can always look back in hindsight and say, yes, could we have done something different? Should he have done something different? And it's easy to critique that on the back end. It's not so easy to do it in real time, in real life. But I think that they tried to do what they could in that situation. I just wish that it hadn't gone down like that. I wish he hadn't gone out and reached his hand out. I don't think she had done anything other than being, disobedient at that time, which kind of goes to what Sharice was saying. If you're just disobedient to police officers, is that enough to, have them lay hands on you and take you into custody? And that's obviously a larger societal discussion that we all have to have amongst ourselves, and the nature of the citizenry and their police. But I appreciate within a short period of time us getting the video out for this. I hope that it's uploaded quickly for people to review it. I look forward to hearing more from all of the public about how we can do things better going forward. Thank you.
Eric, do you have your hand up?
I do. I thought I was done talking, but I just want to respond to Jared. And of course, Jared, the officer would have behaved differently had he known, as we now know after the fact, that she didn't have a gun. But he did not know that one way or the other at that time. So that makes a tremendous difference to me. But anyway.
Bill, and then Sharice.
Yeah, I just want to thank the police force again for providing all this information. It's been interesting. It's the first time I saw body cam footage, and I know I've seen some squad car footage, but seeing it all, how events unfold, I think is really helpful. I did have one question about as far as how the command goes in that sort of situation. So you said there were 7 people total. I remember counting at least 6 that I remember seeing video of. And in this case, they were doing different things. They had, you know, some other people detained, and one guy was blocking the end of the road. Is there one person in that situation that's kind of in command of the, like an incident commander of that particular incident? Or if it drug out farther, would that come into play? Or is everybody pretty much operating on their own?
So each shift is commanded by 2 patrol sergeants, and then our afternoon shift has 1 patrol sergeant. So typically, the patrol sergeants would be the ones that are the most experienced and take charge of the situation. Doesn't mean that always happens that way. Now, if you recall, there were 2 sergeants in these videos. Sergeant Coker was up in Crestview Park dealing with the juvenile out there, while Sergeant Cervantes was down on the road. Now, Officer Ruff and Sergeant Cervantes kind of shared duties on when they were dealing with Mr. Busby and Mrs. Lewis. But ultimately, we look towards rank, and when that isn't available, we look towards experience. So just because, in any given circumstances, just because there's rank there, that doesn't mean they're absolutely the most, I guess, qualified for a certain circumstance. So, yeah, but in this circumstance, Sergeant Cervantes was in charge of the road, Sergeant Coker up on the hill. They ultimately joined down the road at some point, and I think Sergeant Coker probably took over as the lead.
Yes, because Sergeant Cervantes ends up driving himself to the hospital within minutes of this event concluding on scene.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Sharice? Can you unmute yourself?
I'm trying. Okay, here we go. The only thing, the comment, I just have a comment, and basically, what I would like to see going forward is education, public education regarding when one encounters the police, or when the police encounters the public. What the public should, I think if you know the rules, then you know more of how to handle yourself. And I know that there are police policies. You know, I did the citizens police training thing, and I understand that there is that resistance in and of itself is an offense. I don't know that everyone understands that. And I think that if one is informed, then they can make choices based on the information that they already know. And so I think going forward, as a community service, possibly, the police department, one way or the other, you know, at the parks, the park functions and stuff that we do throughout the city, can have that kind of information dispersed during a more congenial time. But what it will do, hopefully, is to inform the public as to the roles that they play in keeping a civil society, a civil type of relationship, and then you can go from there. You know, if stuff gets mucked up, then you know it's definitely clear and pointed. Like, well, this is what happened, and this is why. I think a lot of our general public, unfortunately, is not informed as to policy or as to what makes something an offense and what doesn't. And we maybe watch too much, you know, Law and Order SUV, thinking that we know it all. But every municipality has different ordinances, different ways of handling things. However, if you put them all together, they still, in some way, you know, mimic each other. So I don't know, Bryant, what do you think about that?
Well, I appreciate your comments. We've had different things over the years. We've had community outreach. We had a video series called Cops Corner, where we would try and pick a topic and sort of make it fairly short so people weren't watching or sitting like you did through the Citizens Police Academy for hours and hours. But here's a 5-minute video on this. Here's a 5-minute video on that. I know that Preston James, one of our outreach liaison, he had put together a couple of videos and had done specifically with regards to traffic stops and how to interact with the police and what the expectations were from both sides. And so your thoughts are not lost on me. The best way for us is to figure out who and how to plug in and keep those going. As usually those are the kinds of things we end up with as a pet project of somebody when that person moves on. Sometimes trying to find the right fit for that can be a bit of a challenge, but even things like you said at the park. So yes, thank you for that idea.
Okay.
Therese, that is something our community outreach specialist will be doing. And Preston James did work on that, especially with the teens, and will continue that when we fill his position. And I do think it's important for us all to acknowledge that this part of town where this incident occurred, and this was a call in response to a shooting, has seen more than its fair share of gun violence. And in fact, the very next day, a 15-year-old teen was murdered a few blocks from where this shooting happened. So while we're all buried in the pandemic at the moment, the underlying issues in our community are still very much with us, and gun violence is one of the worst and the biggest challenges that we face. So I appreciate you all for thoughtfully reviewing this, and we'll be reporting back on next steps. But anyway, thank you for your attention tonight. So if there are no more comments, we'll move on to unfinished business. And there is none. Reports of standing committees.
Aha. And that's
not quite you yet.
Oh, not quite me yet. Okay.
Okay. Reports of special committees. There are none. And then
Can I do one, please?
reports of special committees.
Yeah.
Yes, Dennis.
Mayor, we have the committee of the whole report that Councilmember Jacobson should be giving.
Yeah, but that will follow reports of special committees on the agenda.
Is that the bond cap or no?
No, the two resolutions go before the reports of special committees.
Not on this agenda.
Not on our agenda.
Okay, so I've got two different agendas here.
Okay.
It's item G.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Something very fast. I just wanted to report that I received an email from Elise Poirier, who is one of the representatives of the city of Thionville, our sister city in France. And she writes and says that I trust this email will find you well. I also hope that your loved ones are doing fine. With this short notice, I want to assure you that in these extraordinary and difficult times, the city of Thionville is thinking of its American friends of the city of Urbana. Our common history taught us that we know how to defeat our enemies and we will win this war. And she's referring to the coronavirus epidemic. Please receive our strongest support and warmest greetings. All the best from France. And then her name, Pierre, Elise, and all the people of Thionville. I thought that was really thoughtful of her to send us a greeting of hope and encouragement. I looked at the map of France and I found that the whole eastern side of the French nation is rather heavily involved in the coronavirus epidemic as well. And they have quite a few cases for a smaller national area than the United States, but it was appreciated Just thought I'd share that with everybody.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, now we move on to our, this would be the report from the Committee of the Whole. Is that right, Charlie?
I think that is, this is Eric. and I
Okay. So
I
go
believe
ahead,
that
Eric.
That is correct. So on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I would like to move resolution number 2020-04-019R, resolution considering the intention of the city of Urbana, Illinois, to transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bonds. And this is with respect to the private bond cap allocation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Colebrook,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts. Roberts,
Unmute.
He
Gotta
said
un-
yes.
You unmute yourself?
Yeah, I thought I did. I was being polite. I muted myself after I spoke. My response is yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passed. Next, please,
On
Eric.
behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I move resolution number 2020-04-020R, resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues, et cetera. And this is the Illinois Housing Development Authority Series 2020.
I'll second that one.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Dennis. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Colebrook,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is reports of officers. I did have a couple of things. In the past couple of days, we received donations of PPE, the personal protective equipment. The Chinese American Association of Central Illinois is delivering 1,600 surgical masks to the city of Urbana tomorrow, and we're very grateful for that donation. These are disposable masks that we can use from here on out for activities, issues at the city building and beyond. And then we also received a donation of PPE from Icon Hospitality, Mr. Horace Purves. Icon Hospitality is the development partner for the Landmark Hotel. So it was a very great surprise to receive this donation, and they sent an assortment of surgical masks, gowns, and infrared thermometers. And the gowns and infrared thermometers are especially welcome these days. So they went straight to the fire department, who is coordinating our supplies and safety for the city building. So we're extremely grateful for that donation as well. And then sadly, today, COVID-19 took another life in Urbana, and the daughter of Ms. Lydia Stevens posted this on Facebook a few hours ago, but she talked about her mother and said that her mother lived a life full of love and creativity. And some of you may remember Lydia as being one of the vendors at Market at the Square. She was one of the artisans who sold things at the market, and she will be missed by many. So we offer our condolences to family and friends and loved ones of Ms. Stevens. Okay, under new business.
Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to report we have the body camera footage all posted to the city website. So if anyone wasn't able to see it, they can go to the city council meeting page
where we post the agenda and everything else. They'll see a link there labeled camera footage, and you'll see all 6 videos that were included on the PowerPoint tonight.
Thank you to the amazing Jason Liggett. Thank you. I'm not sure which screen to look at. I guess I should look this way. I don't know.
Diane,
I don't see your face on any of them, actually.
Diane, did you want to say anything about Market at the Square reopening?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jared. Market at the Square will reopen this coming Saturday, May 2nd, and it will be a food-only market, although there will be vendors. They're selling fabric masks as well. But we have worked our staff, Brandon Boyes, Brian Heaton, and his staff have worked very, very hard and closely with the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District to redesign the market, reconfigure it to maximize safety for the vendors and for the public. And you will be required to enter the market. You'll need to be wearing a mask. There will be physical distancing, and a long list of procedures will be in place to, again, protect the health and safety of the public. So we know it was very important to open the market. We wanted to continue to support the regional food economy, to provide another venue for buying fresh, healthy food. And frankly, it's a real psychological boost to be able to say the market is opening. It won't be the social event that it usually is, but it will get to the heart of the farmers market, which means the food and products that are grown, made, and produced right here in the region will be sold. So I hope everyone can come, and we'll look for you on Saturday. And if all goes well, this will be the weekly event that it always has been.
And where could the public find out the different items that you just spoke about? Is it posted online somewhere for people?
Sure. The Market at the Square has a Facebook page, and then there's a city they have their own. Do they have their own web page this year? I think they do. Yes.
Yeah, I believe we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And those guidelines will be will be posted all around the market as well. So we ask people to, it's going to be, you're going to have to learn some new habits and new procedures, but I think it's been planned as well as it possibly could, and we're looking forward to a good day. Okay. All righty, we're ready to move on to new business. Ordinance number 2020-04-023, which is an ordinance approving a zoning map amendment, 205 North High Cross Road for OSF Healthcare. It's Plan Case 2398M20 and Community Development, and Lily will be presenting.
And while Lily is setting up, I'll just, she has it on the screen here, but I think she'll be presenting both ordinances together. So I
Okay.
didn't know if you wanted to read the other
Absolutely.
one as well.
Yeah, the other ordinance is ordinance 2020-04-025, which is an ordinance approving a special use permit for 205 North High Cross Road, OSF Healthcare, Plan Case 2399 SU20. Thank you, Lori.
Lily, if you could hear us, you're muted.
Lost the mute button. I apologize. Well, what I would like to repeat, but not just to myself, I'm going to try to be brief, but I really quickly want to call out that many members of OSF's team they're on this virtual call meeting, and two people, Kristen Crawford is here to answer any development questions, and Dr. Rogers is here to talk about OSF's intent to expand their services in Urbana if you choose to call on them. In the spirit of brevity, OSF Healthcare is requesting two things, rezoning from B1 neighborhood business to B3 general business, and then also requesting a special use permit to establish a medical office on a B3 property. So obviously one has to come before the other. The B3 rezoning is what you would want to consider first, and then the special use permit. At the April 9th, 2020 Plan Commission meeting, the commission voted unanimously 6-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning request and the special use permit with two conditions. Sorry, there you go. You can see the site here is at University Avenue and High Cross Road. It's a 2.2 acre site that's zoned B1 neighborhood business. Next to the Aldi's, who also has a special use permit for operating a larger grocery store over 3,500 square feet. And in the 2005 Urbana Comprehensive Plan was identified as community business in the area. The site has been remained vacant for numerous years, ever since it's come into the city. And it was subdivided in 2004 when Aldi bought the property and built their grocery store. Quickly talking about the intensity a little bit of a medical office. The proposed medical office will have special providers and scheduled appointments, much like offices in the main hospital. OSF anticipates maximum staff of 20 employees with 10 to 15 employees working at any given time. The proposed operating hours currently are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And there is a 6-foot wall between the residential properties of Behringer Commons and the site, which should mitigate some of the potential issues if people have them at the residences. And the zoning criteria does explicitly ask how long the property has been vacant under its current zoning. And it's been zoned this before 2004 when it was sectioned off by the Aldi parcel. It was and 2000 when it came into the city. Plan Commission had a public hearing, and we talked a bit about the sidewalk crossing. The new medical office, if approved, would have to connect the sidewalk from Aldi to Behringer Commons to the north. The sidewalk itself does not connect to the Kickapoo Rail Trail or to the intersection, which cuts people off from the trail and the Walmart. As you can imagine, is a connection issue, not just for pedestrians and bicycles, but also for transit users as well, trying to access either grocery store on either side. OSF Healthcare is a partner in health in the community. They have a community health needs assessment that they do with Carl, the CU Public Health District United Way. They identify several different goals in there, mostly to reduce obesity by providing better access to healthy food in stores that provide food. They also have access to parks and trails in there as well. So the city staff had prepared a condition for contributing to the connection to that intersection. So there was connection for people on the north side of the intersection to access the Kickapoo Rail Trail and the Urbana Walmart. Also the people from the south side, and this includes transit stops, being able to access the Aldi and the medical office. This project was estimated to cost at $100,000. The city plans to apply for an Illinois Department of Transportation grant in the next year. So there's no grant guarantee that the city will get the grant. The condition was conditioned on whether the city would get the grant. At Plan Commission, city staff recommended a condition, but OSF had not had the chance to consider whether or not they agreed to it or not. The condition wouldn't have been appropriate to a special use permit if OSF disagreed. And so Plan Commission revised the condition. They thought in general it was a great idea, but they wanted it to be more of a voluntary and cooperative effect. At Plan Commission, they had 2 letters of support for the path improvement. A third letter that was in your council packet was also submitted after the Plan Commission for support of a path extending to that intersection. I'm going to go through the findings rather than read criteria for the sake of brevity, but also they are just summarized criteria. The OSF Healthcare is requesting the rezoning from B1 Neighborhood Business Zoning District to B3 General Business Zoning District at 205 North High Cross Road. Additionally, OSF Healthcare requests a special use permit to build a medical office in the B3 General Business Zoning District. The proposed B3 General Business Zoning District and special use permit would allow the applicant to build a medical office. This would be generally compatible with the community business future land use designation of the 2005 Urbana Comprehensive Plan. The proposed B3 General Business Zoning District would be compatible with the surrounding area, and as the adjacent property is a business of a similar scale and the residences nearby are separated by either an opaque wall or a road. The proposed B3 General Business Zoning District will likely have no discernible impact on adjacent property values. Currently, the 2.2 acre property is vacant. The subject property is suitable for business uses like those allowed in the proposed B3 General Business Zoning District. The property is located near a major intersection and near other businesses. The proposed use is generally conducive to the public convenience at this location, as it is located in an area with other business uses, I-74 and at its major intersection. The proposed use would not be unreasonably injurious or detrimental to the district in which it shall be located, as leaving the site vacant would likely be more harmful to a neighborhood. The proposed use conforms to the regulations and standards of and preserves the essential character of the B3 General Business Zoning District in which it shall be located, as it is allowed use in the district with the approval of a special use permit. City Council has the following options for the rezoning for an ordinance approving a zoning map amendment. The first option is to approve the ordinance, and the second option is to deny the ordinance. City Council has the following options for an ordinance approving a special use permit. The first option is to approve the ordinance with conditions, or deny the ordinance. At the April 9th, 2020 meeting, Plan Commission voted unanimously, 6 yeas and 0 nays, to forward the City Council with a recommendation to approve the zoning map amendment and special use permit with the following conditions you can see on the screen for the special use permit. That the applicant develops the property in general conformance with the site plan, which is ordinance attachment A, and that the applicant works with the city, surrounding businesses, and property owners to explore the possibility of contributing financially to the construction of a multi-use path to connect the OSF and Aldi sites to the northwest corner of University Avenue and High Cross Road. And staff concurs with that opinion. And I'm here for any questions.
Questions for Lily? Is that Bill with a hand up, and then looks like Mary Alice and Sharice. Bill Brown.
Thankfully. I mean, look, I don't really understand why this requires B3. It seems like it's no more impactful than the Aldi that exists there. So I don't have any opposition for this medical use or the rezoning. I do have some questions about why the sidewalk wasn't connected to the intersection when it was first subdivided. Does our subdivision ordinance and rules, when you do a subdivision like that, require sidewalks to be connected to intersections? I think this was done about the same time as Walmart, 2005 or 6.
It was done in 2004, and I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look into that, whether it was required in 2004 when it was subdivided or whether it was required today.
Okay, so if it was required, then apparently they got some kind of waiver or something. It seems like I've actually looked at the usage of that area on Strava. You get heat maps from people that record their activities. And even for walking, there's quite a bit of use, well, for walking and biking, there's quite a bit of use, of course, on the trail, but also High Cross Road, people going up High Cross Road, coming down from Behringer Circle, I think, where it comes out on High Cross Road, and then coming down this sidewalk as far as it can go, then cutting across. You can see where they cut across, and then come south at the corner there from the northeast corner. So there's people using that intersection both sides. And right now we have the existing pedestrian lights. So we have basically pedestrian crossways to nowhere, to the corner there. So it would make sense to have that bill, but I do also understand that it's not going to benefit OSF probably as much as it will Aldi. Aldi would get more business from foot traffic off the trail. I know people are going from Scottswood and from Urbana Estates. They're walking to Walmart and to Aldi, and they aren't going to go back to Smith Road, where about the only crossing is the only other light crossing to get across University there. Does the state have any, the University is a state highway there, right?
Yes.
Do they have responsibility to provide any of this pedestrian infrastructure since it's their road?
I'd have to look into that.
Okay. And I guess the other option would be some kind of special assessment where we could assess both properties, but would they have to agree to that? Or is there some mechanism where we can do that even if they don't agree?
For OSF to have a special assessment?
Well, I think we could assess probably both properties in the subdivision that would benefit, maybe even Behringer. I don't know if you could argue they would benefit, but maybe that's a question for Lori or Jim, if we need to go that route. What other options are there? I think we should try to make it happen pretty soon, and not, my concern with waiting for a grant is we have a lot of other things we want to use pedestrian grants for, and the state has a limited amount of money, although I think more now, or they were going to have more now. Who knows what with the coronavirus, how that's going to affect things, but there's a limited amount of money in the grant process. So I just wondered what other more immediate options there might be to make that connection.
I think that's something that we will be looking at. Perhaps we can get a list together and share that with you separately. There's, of course, a lot of potential options, but we do want to, of course, look also at 2004, and was that a waiver, or was it in the annexation agreement as a waiver? So let us do some digging on that, if you don't mind.
Okay. Thanks. I mean, I don't think the OSF would necessarily benefit from it any more than Aldi would, although their employees would probably like to be able to get over to the trail for lunch walks and things like that. Thanks.
Mary Alice, and then Sharice.
I'm wondering, Lily, first of all, it's lovely to see you. You're like a regular attendee now. I think we've seen you almost at every single one. I'm wondering what B zoning, if any, automatically allows a medical office by right?
None.
None. So what zoning category does allow a medical office by right?
Oh, no. So there's no zoning districts that allow for a medical office by right. For all districts that it is allowed to have a medical office, you need to have a special use permit.
Okay.
Or apply for one.
I mean, I was going to ask why we're doing B3, but it sounds to me like they have to do a special use permit anyway, whatever zoning they chose. And then I was hoping that OSF could talk a little bit about your thoughts on the multi-use path, and if they are interested in cost sharing that with the city and possibly Aldi.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tony Tratt. I'm the manager of real estate services for OSF. I'm not sure if everybody can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to introduce myself and introduce the team and see if there's any questions. One, the question right there that we can help answer. Again, I'm Tony Tradd. I'm the manager of real estate services. Dr. Jared Rogers, who's the president of the hospital, is on the line as well. We also have Kristen Crawford, who is the ambulatory development manager for the Eastern region for the ministry. And then we also have Josh Markevich, who is our broker representing us in this transaction with Aldi. And so when we originally started working on this, the intent was to build a facility there to utilize and reach the Eastern region. Lily reached out to us and started had some questions about if we'd be willing to do this or not. And as you may know, OSF is a ministry-based healthcare system. We have been in the communities for over 120 years. So any discussion regarding the wellness or the betterment of a community is always welcome on our side. We just feel that to carry the burden of the entire expense of this project on our own is a difficult thing, but we are always and very welcome to reach out or work with the community that's surrounding us that would all benefit. There's mention of all these. There's mention of Walmart. There's the mention of the city and the state assistance as well. So it isn't as if we are opposed to any walking trail. If anything, I think it does benefit not only Aldi's, but it also benefits us as well as the rest of the community. I just think it's extremely difficult to carry the entire burden of that expense at this time for us. So that's in speaking with Lily and having a little bit of help with the folks from the planning department, we felt very confident that we would sit down and speak to any party who'd be willing to come in and help with us.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you.
The clerk has his hand up. Charlie, did you have something we needed to deal with before we go on to the other council members?
Yes, just remind you that we'll need to extend the meeting here shortly. We're coming up against our first time limit of 10:30.
Oh, good grief. Okay. Is there a motion to extend for, what are we at, 10:17 till 10:45, just in case? We probably won't.
Motion to extend the meeting till 10:45.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes. I think Bill Colbrook next.
No, I'm next.
Oh, you're next? All right, Sheree.
Okay. I do have some questions for Lily and Lori and probably Mr. Tradd. Anyway, my question is basically, will this particular building fall under the same exemption status that the rest that other OSF properties fall under?
Yes.
Property tax exemptions?
Yeah. So it'll not be contributing financially to the city and the upkeep.
If it's owned by OSF Healthcare, which is a nonprofit, they will not be required to pay property taxes.
Well, they will apply for that, and we don't make that determination, of course, but.
Okay, no, well, of course, we don't make that determination or we wouldn't have had to write out a check. My question then is, what other businesses have there been any other businesses that do fall under the B1 that or B3 that have shown any interest in this property next to Aldi that would be financially contributing to the city of Urbana tax-wise?
Because that's between two property owners, an owner who would want to sell their property and an owner or a potential person who's interested in it. The city has no record of any interest or other buyers who've come up to Aldi, who owns the property currently, for this.
And Lily, you said that it's been vacant since 2004, is that correct?
Before that, yeah.
Well, right, when it was
But yes,
farmland, yes.
Under its current zoning, it's been vacant since 2000. But before that, it was Champaign County B2, and it was vacant.
Okay, So my question, my next comment or question, is there any type of deal that can be made so that there will be a financial contribution from OSF to the city of Urbana regarding this if they're not going to be paying taxes? This will be just another parcel added to their list, many parcels that they already own that takes away revenue, so to speak. Because at the moment, Aldi owns this, correct? Yes?
That is correct.
Okay, Aldi's paying property taxes on it?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. Behringer Commons does have some interesting arrangements, but I don't think this property falls under those arrangements for property tax abatements. So I think so, yes.
No, okay.
So to answer your question, in terms of the rezoning, we cannot place any conditions on a rezoning in the state of Illinois. In terms of the special use permit, any conditions that city council may elect to put on a project is outlined in the zoning ordinance in terms of they need to mitigate the use, the impact on the use. And if you would like, we can go through the specifics on the types of things, but generally a condition would talk about operations, hours, number of employees, that kind of thing. I cannot remember the exact case, but I have a recollection that we had a previous special use permit request with a question from a council member about whether or not the tax exempt status could be considered as part of that discussion. And I believe the legal division's ruling on that was it was not advisable to do so.
Okay. Jim, are you still there? Jim Simon? Is he still here?
Yes.
Okay, maybe he can answer to that.
I would have to, I didn't do the research, I believe Kirk did, but I would have to look into it.
The issue of negotiating a payment in lieu of taxes would be a separate negotiation.
Yes.
Anyway.
Clearly that we could do.
And it's related to the ongoing litigation at this point, so.
Okay.
I mean, the parties separate from the litigation, if they're willing to negotiate some kind of transactional agreement, it won't have an effect on the litigation unless somebody brings up, well, that should be part of some kind of a larger arrangement. So that would have to be up to the mayor to decide whether to explore that. The pilot agreement would last so long.
Well, it's just that it seems like this would have come through a COW meeting first before it just came to city council for approval or whatever. And maybe there's more research that needs to be done.
Well, this is coming to the council appropriately as presented. What you're asking for is something beyond that, would be an agreement, some kind of an agreement, pilot agreement, if that's the route to go. That would be separate, and that would have to go to the council.
Okay, that's basically all I wanted to know.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, I'm following up on what Sharice, the issue Sharice has raised. I would very much like to see us pursue a pilot agreement for the special use, connected to the special use permit for this particular property. I can't see that there's any harm in doing that, and I think it's appropriate. Now, I guess what I'm hearing from staff is that we can't attach any such condition as a pilot agreement to rezoning. But what I'd like to see us do is defer this and direct the staff to pursue with OSF the issue of whether a pilot agreement can be negotiated for this property before we, really make a final decision on the package, especially on the special use permit.
And I would second that thought.
Jim? Can you unmute your?
There we go. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The city has to be careful not to present this or have it perceived as coercion, because then it would become a condition of the zoning, and that is not, we can't add that condition on top of a zoning. It could be I'll call it a side agreement. That's not quite the clear explanation, but we certainly can negotiate a separate, unrelated agreement if OSF and whoever else would participate in this, the OSF is what we're talking about. If they're willing to negotiate some kind of an arrangement, we certainly can do that.
Well, if we think the zoning is appropriate on its own merits, then we could pass the zoning, but let's defer the special use permit until we start some negotiations on pilot.
That one I don't right now have an answer for in terms of the, tying a special use permit to a pilot agreement. That would require a little bit of research.
Is there a motion for the first ordinance, 2020-04-023, the zoning?
I haven't had a chance to ask a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dennis.
I did raise my hand. And it had to do with Sharice's question about whether this property, which is in a business zoning district, is truly a business which contributes to the community, or is it a nonprofit organization that will be untaxable? And we're learning that we are going to expect that this property will be taken off the tax rolls, which I don't think is exactly a great direction to go in. But I'm not going to, what I would suggest is I would follow Eric's advice, and I would like to see, if not the zoning, at least the approval of the special permit be returned to the committee of the whole for discussion, because the committee of the whole is really where we'd like to receive any kinds of ordinances that come from the Planning Commission. And I think we've established a preference for that in the past, and even rearranged the timing of our meetings for that purpose. So I think it could be vetted better by deferring the second ordinance to the committee of the whole and then returning it eventually to discussion in this full city council.
Okay. Bill Brown and then Bill Colbrook.
Yeah, I would be opposed to sending the special use back for that reason. If there's some other reason you want to send it back, but I think we need to consider the use and not the ownership. I don't see anything in the criteria for approving the use that allows me to consider ownership.
Bill Colbrook.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I had 3 comments. Now I think I've got 4. I'm thinking back to a prior meeting to the issue of why the pedestrian crossing was not done earlier. And I remember somebody, and I apologize, I don't remember who or what meeting, that said that it was not financially viable at the time. I don't know what made it not financially viable. I'm assuming when the Aldi's was built, or maybe when that intersection was originally improved and widened. So I've got that recollection. I just wanted to make that statement. And also, as a former member of the Behringer Commons subdivision, I just think that the development on that side of town is a good thing for the city, and especially for Ward 6, and specifically the type of business that it is, medical business. I think that's good for the east side. I guess lastly, I too would not, I guess, be in favor of sending this back to the committee of the whole, just because, you know, it sounds like we're on some shaky legal ground, asking, you know, maybe the city to do some bending and twisting, and you know, I don't want us to get into a legal peril and put conditions on something that is, you know, would not really stand up to legal scrutiny. So I just have a concern about that.
Sharice and then Dennis.
Yes, this is for Mr. Trad, I guess.
Yes, ma'am.
Because in the briefing that I saw here in the exhibit here, and it talks about OSF has always been ministry based, which really means that they are community based. I'd like to know, what other ministries does OSF have?
Could you unmute, please?
You're on mute, baby. You need to take your mute off.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Thank you. I apologize about that. And it's a great question, and I'll you know, of course, welcome the rest of the team to jump in. But you know, ministry base is synonymous with the community base. You know, besides the fact that we have a foundation, Life Flight, that delivers patients as well as does charitable work, and not to mention some of the other charities that we work with in the community as well. So you are correct, and ministry does equal community, and I think that's kind of how we've addressed it. And to be honest, we really chose this lot because we wanted to be on the east side of Urbana, not necessarily just to be in Urbana, but also there's a lot of outlying areas that we can reach as well. We have patients throughout Urbana, Champaign and Urbana, north, south, east, and west. We recently acquired this hospital about a year and a half ago, and one of the actions we took is there was a vacant facility at St. Joseph just down the road from Urbana. We did put it up for sale. A local individual purchased it. The communication at that time from the community was, you know, goodness, you know, we really were hoping that you'd be able to open this facility back up. At that stage, our strategy was not there, but it is now in terms of trying to serve the Urbana community. And so when you do say ministry-based, my approach to responding to you would be, we want to reach Urbana, we want to reach the surrounding areas as well and bring them into town. And, you know, and not only just to bring them in, you know, for our sake, but, you know, with Walmart across the street, Aldi's right next door, you know, there'll be funds, economic impact brought into the community, not just by us, but, you know, folks coming in to have an appointment could easily walk over to Aldi's and do their shopping as well. So some of our clients are a little older, so that would make them maybe an outing for them, so that they can come in and spend some of their dollars in town. But back to your original question, I would like to state that the ministry is community-based. So
Okay.
we do offer other things.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, what other ministries, like, do you work with the homeless? Do you work with the blind? You have a hospice, or is there something you work with at-risk youth? What other ministries do you have?
Well, I think there's quite a bit, and I'll have to defer to Dr. Rogers on some details about that. But we do have a hospice home. We also, you know, have the foundation that does bring funds into the community throughout, not just the Peoria area, but throughout wherever we are. And there is a lot of charitable use.
Okay.
Mary Alice or Kristen Crawford.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I work at OSF as well with Tony, and we do a lot of work with the FQHC as well. So I wanted to bring that in. So with Promise, we have given money to them. We support them within our hospital. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that as well. We're looking at other opportunities to work with some FQHCs in town.
What is that? FQHB? I don't know what that means.
FQHC, sorry about that. It's a federally qualified health center. So Promise is the current qualified health center. So they provide services for patients that either have Medicaid or no pay, and we provide them dollars to be able to support our patients within our hospital. So to do that, as well as there's other initiatives that we have been looking at with them. We support Aunt Martha's in Danville with our Heart of Mary, and they've been looking at opportunities as well. So continuing to increase our presence. We do a lot of nonprofit with patients with Medicaid or self-pay. We have a Sisters Charity program that we provide for our patients so they can apply for that, and our sisters pay for patients to receive care for free.
Okay. And in Urbana, what ministries do you have set up here in Urbana or Champaign?
That's Promise is the federally qualified health center in Champaign. So we have them in the hospital in Champaign. We support.
What do they do? Again, what do they do? Promise? Promise is, what does that mean? What do they specifically?
So
could you be more specific?
Well, and is Dr. Rogers here? Because he could speak to exactly what they're doing within the community.
Yep. Dr. Rogers?
Looks like
Hello,
he's
can you hear
muted.
me?
Is somebody muted?
Can anyone hear Dr. Rogers?
I can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Okay, you can hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, Promise Francis Nelson in Champaign serves a lot of folks that are otherwise underserved, and we support them financially. We support them certainly in spirit, and they also have a space in our hospital where they have an advanced practice provider, a nurse practitioner who works there, provides primary care for folks in the community. We support Crisis Nursery, and we have done that for, oh my gosh, going on nearly 35 years. And again, financially and with support of their security and laundry and food and those such things. We also operate the Community Resource Center, the CRC, and that is based in our hospital, and we provide all kinds of social service connections for people in the community who otherwise couldn't have those connections. We refer them to the various social agencies which they may not have any idea even exist in order to fulfill their needs. We partner with the Champaign County Christian Health Clinic, who utilizes space in our hospital to provide free care to members of the community. And we also partner with Promise Healthcare Smile Healthy program to provide dental care for children who need to have restorative dental treatments under general anesthesia. We provide that for free to these children. And there are other organizations we do partner with. That's just some examples.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Alice, you had a question?
Yeah, I was hoping that Charisse and Eric could speak to, so from what I'm understanding you wanting to do with the special permit, are you suggesting a further discussion about the multi-use path, or are you talking about a discussion about the property tax?
It might
for me, it's property tax.
Yeah, well, it is property tax, but it's payment in lieu of taxes. So this doesn't challenge the tax exemption, but this is something that in many communities around the country, organizations that are tax exempt negotiate with the city or community some compensatory payment in lieu of taxes, PILOT. And I would like to explore the question of whether such a negotiation might be done here. Now, I guess we're told that no such negotiation would be legal with respect to zoning. zoning can't be conditional on something like that. But, and Jim said he would research whether or not, as a condition of a special use permit, such an arrangement would be legal. And so I guess Sharice, if you think this is, if we're on the same page,
Yeah.
we're suggesting that that perhaps we pass the zoning tonight, because it does seem as though the property is appropriate. The location, the surroundings are appropriate for that level of zoning that's requested, but that the special use permit be returned to committee of the whole with direction to the staff to explore both the feasibility and the legality of negotiating payment in lieu of taxes.
Jim? Is your hand up?
Yes, it is. If you're talking, I understood your original question to be a payment in lieu of taxes agreement in conjunction with the zoning, i.e. zoning, the requested zoning change would be conditioned in part among the other conditions that Lily has so carefully laid out. If it would be conditioned on entering into a pilot agreement of some sort, that we can't do. That's been researched.
Got it.
And what I'm talking about is some kind of an agreement. But if you're talking a true payment in lieu of taxes, generally, one, they have a limited duration, and that brings up the same situation that the city is facing and has been facing for what, now about 11 years with Carl. That all started with a payment in lieu of taxes agreement. Now you're getting into terms of settling a lawsuit that's pending. And I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not handling the suit, and it would not be appropriate to comment on that suit or whether or not it should be settled or what terms it should be settled. But I will tell you, you are entering into that area.
Well, are you telling me that if we request this for the special use permit for this property, that would complicate or possibly compromise our position in the entire legal issue on the tax exemption?
At this point, I can't answer that. And because we're now getting into possible legal strategy, and that's not a subject for public meeting. And further, I don't know what is on OSF's mind in that respect or their attorney's mind in that respect.
So I think that this hopefully could wait a couple of weeks for us to consider that and for us perhaps to be advised by you and for a matter to be discussed with OSF.
I think this would really require input from the attorney handling that case,
Sure.
Mr. Fred Grosser. I'm not involved directly with these cases.
Okay. Well, I'm really sorry to complicate life so much, but I don't know. I'd like to see this question. I'd like to see this question explored, and I would certainly follow, expert advice on whether this is whether this path.
I would as well, but I'd like to see more exploration.
Well, are we ready to put this item on the table? Item 1.
Looks like there's 3 hands up, Diane.
We need a motion to continue the meeting. We're about
That's right. I'm asking for a motion.
Well, Mayor, we need a motion to continue the meeting I would suggest another 30 minutes.
There a motion to continue the meeting to 11:15.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. if we're going to continue discussing along this vein, we really need to get one of these items on the table so it can be discussed, unless there are more technical questions. Okay, is there a motion for ordinance 2020-04023, which is the zoning map amendment?
Okay, I'll do that one. All right. I move that we approve ordinance number 2020-04023, an ordinance approving a zoning map amendment concerning 205 North High Cross Road, OSF Healthcare, Plan Case 2398-M-20.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Eric. Okay, any discussion on this item? And we've established that it cannot be tied to any conditions related to a pilot agreement.
Right.
Are there any other issues related to this? Dennis?
No, not on this one.
Okay, Bill, your hand is up. Bill Brown?
No, not on this one, sorry.
Okay. All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Colebrook,
Yes.
Hersey,
No.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is ordinance 2020-04-025, which is the special use permit. Is there a motion to get it on the table? Bill Brown?
Yeah, I move we approve ordinance number 2020-04-025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is that Jared?
That was Jared.
Okay. Discussion.
Yeah, I still have my hand up. So I see the advantage of further developing this plot of land, because I think that ultimately it's going to bring be an activator for more development in this corner of Urbana, which I think is something we've all been waiting for quite a long time. And I have no problem with OSF as an organization. I've used them in the past, and I think that generally they are a positive aspect to the community. But I'd be willing to table this decision to send it to the committee holes so that we have options to consider what the alternatives might be to engage in OSF as they claim that they're like excited to be a community partner with the city of Urbana as they expand in our area. And I guess I'd like to understand how they see that working in the future to accomplish some of the goals that we imagine, whether they be the development of a joint use path or to contribute in some other manner to the community more directly. So I'd like to see ordinance 2020-04-025. I guess I'll make a motion that we move it to the next committee of the whole for further discussion.
Well, we already have a motion on the table.
Oh, all right.
So
it's got to be an amendment to the motion.
Are you offering a friendly amendment?
Yeah, friendly. Yeah, but it would allow us to learn more about their idea of what partnership is, and to explore possibilities before we take the final action. And also, I also believe that it's important to bring some of these issues that have questions arising in them first to our committee so that we can vet them better than just passing them outright at a committee, at a city council meeting. Which was a request that we've expressed before here in the city council.
Do we need a second on that amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, so the amendment was made by Dennis, seconded by Eric.
Mayor, it's essentially a substitute motion.
How is that handled?
Basically, they're amending the motion to approve to make it a motion to send to committee.
Okay, so does that require then a roll call vote? with a substitute motion?
No, not for an amendment.
Okay. So Jared and then Bill Brown.
I guess my comment to other council members would, Sharice, Eric, and Dennis, I mean, I don't think there's any question. We all have the same sentiments of, what's gone on with the hospitals being off the tax rolls. But I would echo Bill and Bill that I think this isn't the place to try and move our hand. We already have ongoing litigation about this exact issue going on in courts. No need to drag it on here, and I think it would be a great development opportunity for East Urbana. So I'm not going to be in favor of a motion to keep it in, though, Dennis, I do follow you in spirit at the very least of not having seen it in committee of the whole first and voting on it directly on council. That's the only reason I would support it. I would not support it for the other reasons stated.
Bill Brown.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a annexation agreement or a development agreement where we were giving up something, I think it would be worth discussing a little bit more. But I think, trying to do this piecemeal when we have dozens or scores or hundreds of properties in town owned by the hospitals that we need to deal with, or that needs to have some conclusion to. I don't think it's really worth trying to do this piecemeal, and it could be detrimental to the other effort.
It certainly have an impact. So we have a motion to send this to committee with a second. Are you ready to vote on that?
Well, yeah, so basically it's, move to amend. So the motion is to amend to send it to committee. So that can be just a voice vote.
Okay. So
Diane, can I say something real quickly?
who's that? Mary Alice? Yes.
Thank you. I agree with Jared. I think that, and Bill Brown, that having a conversation in terms of property taxes is probably not the general direction to go here with the ongoing litigation. But I also agree with Dennis in that there's obviously a lot of conversation going on here about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, about the multi-use path, about a lot of things. And so for that reason, I'm in support of the amendment just to further our conversation on this. But just so I'm clear, I don't think that further conversation in my mind has to do with property tax.
Any other comments? Okay, Charlie, are we voting on the amendment?
Yeah, we're voting on the amendment. We probably should get a roll call just so I can have a count.
Okay. So the motion is to send ordinance number 2020-04-025 back to committee of the whole. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown?
No.
Colebrook?
No.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
No.
Roberts?
Yes.
And Wu?
Yes.
That motion passes.
So the motion on the floor now is to send this to committee. It's sort of a double vote.
Okay. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Colebrook?
No.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Sticking to my guns, no.
Roberts?
Yes, thank you.
And Wu?
Yes.
That motion passes. So we are sending ordinance number 2020-04-025 back to committee of the whole. And with no further business before this body, this meeting is adjourned.